Holy crap.
People persist in doubting the evidence.
Don't run and hide. Don't be afraid. Don't turn away any longer. The truth will set you free. You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
We're turning all of our antennas towards Jimmy Church on Dark Matter Radio.
And now, your host, the captain of conspiracy, the prince of paranormal. This ain't your daddy's radio network show. This is Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Oh, yeah. Bring it down. Bring it down. This thing on? This thing on? Hey! Let's go. It's Fade to Black. Nothing like a few days off and back in the saddle. Strapped in. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. All right, crank up my cans. Let's go. Let's get this one cracking. It's Wednesday, June 4th. 147 days in the new year. As always, we are live from the JP Motorsports Studios right here in Burbank, California. For KJCR and the Dark Matter Radio Network, I am your host, Jimmy Church. Welcome. Let's go. Man, excited. Oh, you have no idea what it's like on a Wednesday around here at the studio leading up to the show. Just, you know, it's exciting. Welcome. Welcome, everybody listening across the country, around the world, hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, far and near, east, west, north, south. Everybody, our good friends over in Europe, Australia, UK, Netherlands, Finland, Norway, Belgium. Did I leave Holland? Hope I didn't leave anybody out. Chile, Brazil. Might even have somebody in Panama listening tonight. More on that later. All right. You know how we do it. We start off every show same way. Big, proud salute to the men and women in uniform all around the world fighting the good fight for us. This show is live. Without them, there is no me, there is no you, there is no us, and you couldn't hear me right now, and I really, really need you to think about that. The show is number one. You know it. It is amazing. I am so humbled. All the listeners out there, the way that this thing has just blown up. And you know what? You knew that, though. You knew it was coming. I felt it. It's just the right show at the right time. All right. Oh, man. Okay. Tweet box is already full. Look at this. Hello, everybody. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Tonight we have Dr. Stephen Greer. So for everybody here to listen to Stephen Greer tonight, Dr. Greer, tweet hashtag DMRadioNet. Jump in with all of our regular listeners over on Twitter right now, and jump in with the conversation. It's friendly. They're nice, but very smart. So get ready for that. All right. Today, actor Bruce Dern is 78 years old. Love that guy. Totally weird, like me. Totally weird, like me. Which is why, you know, I love his work so much. Everything is great, but you know what? His best film, seriously, and they're all good, but his best, 1972's Silent Running. What an amazing film that was. And his co-stars were a bunch of robots. And how he pulled that, it was just an amazing film. An amazing film. Special effects by Douglas Trumbull. You know, he previously did everything for 2001, The Andromeda Strain. Bruce Dern, 78 years old. All right. 78 years young. Keep it going, Bruce. Have you seen him on Big Love? Dude's out of his mind. All right, Twitter, at JChurchRadio. YouTube is KJCR Fade to Black. I guess, I don't know how it's happened, but, YouTube, it's all about the replays of this show, and that's what goes on there. And it has, like everything else, it's just kind of caught on. But, again, I'm humbled. Thank you for, the subscribers on that channel that are going to listen to this show. They don't realize sometimes that this show is live. It's live. I'm live right now. But thank you for subscribing and listening. You can't always listen live. I get that. But YouTube is just, man, what a life of its own that has taken. So follow us on Twitter, at JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. I know you are over at Dark Matter Radio right now listening to this show. So please scroll up, do what you got to do, and click on everything. Click on Twitter, click on Facebook, YouTube, get all that stuff done. Participate. This show is for you and about you. It's always been that way. Follow, like, and subscribe. Participate. Tonight, Dr. Stephen M. Greer will be with us. I'll let the cat out of the bag right now. We've got some worldwide breaking news with Dr. Greer that happened today, and he's going to break that on this show tonight, so stay tuned. and I kind of know what's coming. I can't wait. I told him to just stop. I don't want to know. I want to be shocked like everybody else. You can email throughout the show, Jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can also do so over on the website. Go to the contact page where you can do so with NSA specially encrypted computers, so you can do it in confidence. You know all about that. Contact in the Desert. I think either tomorrow night or Friday, we're going to announce the winners that have won so far, passes to Contact in the Desert. If you haven't done it yet, head over to jimmychurchradio.com. You know where the webpage is, jimmychurchradio.com. Head over there. Scroll down. You will see the Contact in the Desert banner. Little ad right there. Click on that, and that will take you over to the special Fade to Black contest page. That's right. You can win tonight a $400 all-access pass to Contact in the Desert. Who's going to be there? We're going to be there. That's the most important thing. We're going to broadcast Friday night, August 8th, live from Contact in the Desert. And we're going to have tons of special guests, which will include you if you win that pass. I can't wait for you. I mean, have you won anything? I haven't. I did once, something small. But wouldn't it be cool? And if you do win, you are going to come on the air with us. The whole Fade to Black crew is going to be there. And anybody else that we can grab, including Dr. Greer. We'll all be on the show that night. Tellinger, Jim Mars, Nick Pope, John Anthony West, Jason Martell, David Wilcock, Van Daniken. Should I get Van Daniken on the show? I didn't even think about that. I could probably, if you guys want Van Daniken on the show, email me, tweet, put it on Facebook. You want him on the show, I'll get him on the show next week. And I haven't talked to him yet, but where's he at, Switzerland? We'll get him on the show. Also, big announcement. Are you ready? Are you sitting down? This is a big one. We're going to have Larry Haber on the show next Thursday for a John Teeter update. As you know, Larry Haber came on this program and announced that Teeter would return in 2014. Got a phone call today from Mr. Haber. Check that out. So next Thursday could be potentially earth-shattering news. We've broken so much news on this show for the last couple of weeks. I need to just chill out on that. But next Thursday could be pretty whacked out, and I'm really looking forward to Larry coming on the show. So that's next Thursday, Larry Haber. Next Friday, by the way, little preemptive strike. As you know, we don't announce guests in advance, except next Friday, Larry Warren. That's right, Larry Warren. Left Eddie's Gate, Larry Warren and Peter Robbins. Larry Warren's going to come on this show next Friday, live from London with Peter Robbins, to discuss the controversy that is going down right now with all the Rendlesham witnesses. Now, he assured me of this. It's going to be Friday the 13th, and he said that Ronnie James Dio would be proud. So he said, man, we are going dark on Friday the 13th, and I'm going to come on and bear all. And I said, let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. So that's next Friday. Larry Warren. He's like the missing piece to the puzzle. And I can't wait for that. So, again, I'm humbled by this, just humbled. People reaching out to this program like that. So, now listen, I have got a lot to do tonight on the show. So, anyway, Contact in the Desert, get that out of the way. Go over, register. I wish everybody could win. Just go. The more you register and the more that you get in on this, the better your chances. I think in the end we're giving away 12 tickets, something like that, before August 8th. And wouldn't that be great? And all 12 of you will probably, let's go hang out. And I promise you a really good time out in Joshua Tree. Okay, so go and register for that. Oh, so much stuff to get through tonight. And we are going to have Dr. Greer promptly at the bottom of the hour. So I have a bunch of stuff I want to get through. Obviously, this Malibu deep underwater base thing has taken over the internet. And it's pretty astonishing to see what it has done. And everybody that has contacted me, or if I bring it up in the conversation, it just seems like everybody knows about it. And so anyway, talked to Dr. Greer today, and it's like the first thing in the conversation. I was like, really? Oh, yeah, Jimmy, whoa. And so anyway, so much email has come in, so many offers for help. And I want to mention Scott Donnelly real quick. Sent us a ton of info on remote-operated vehicles for the boat trip that we're about to take off on and do off the coast of Malibu. We're going to do it within the month. We're going to do it as quick as we can. There are a couple of news agencies that are releasing this story in the next 24 hours. I got the interviews out of the way this week, and without saying what it is and who, what, when, where, but I'm sure that we'll be talking about it tomorrow night. And so it's, again, it's just humbling. And with that, got so much email. And I'm going to take the next few minutes to read as much of it as I can. I also got a really cool message from Anya Briggs that I'm going to read at the end of this. Anyway, a bunch of email came in. This one's from Rick. Rick says, the listener that said the deep underwater base could be a power generator blew my mind. A friend and I were discussing and complaining about how we don't evolve from our power sources, and he brought up research into using tidal currents and waves to create energy. If that is just a hidden power plant for a hidden base, how big is the base it is powering? What would need the level of power that it would provide? The possibility I find scarier than it just being a base itself. That's from Rick. And he's referring to the email that we got last week about it looking like a Tennessee Valley Authority power station at a dam. And yeah, I totally agree. Wouldn't that just be astonishing? This email came in from Chuck. I have known about this base for years now. My friend was a submariner, and he told submariner, and he told me about the underwater city about 10 years ago. The Navy has known about this place for over 30 years. He told me that it was created back when the ocean was not right on the coastline of today. The coastline was from the base of the base 2,000 or 3,000 years ago. There were other people here at that time who created it, as well as the city that is under Los Angeles right now. The discovery of the city was covered up back in the late 1800s. I remember hearing about that, by the way. And the guy that found it was told to stay out, and they caved in his entrance to it. That's a rumor that's been going on around Los Angeles for a long time. It is all built over now, but there are old newspaper articles about it in Los Angeles. You should check it out. And that's from Chuck. And Chuck goes on to say at the end, he is kind of strange, my friend. Then you guys come out with this story, and it was like I was sitting with him all over again. That came in from Chuck. This one from Stan B. Free thermal energy devoid of any consequences may be the reason that UFOs are seen around active volcanoes. We were talking about that last week with Blake Cousins and the prevalence of that, not only in Hawaii, but also throughout Mexico and Europe, Italy. Using the heat energy may allow a free boost to allow the craft to jump or shift locations with minimal effort. We use a thermistor to dissimilar metals exposed to heat to cause electrons to flow and create small amounts of electricity. An advanced craft may be able to use the heat energy to create massive amounts of current and in effect borrow otherwise wasted thermal energy to power movements and interplanetary, interdimensional, or otherwise. And again, that there is a strange reason. There's a reason why it seems so many craft have been seen entering and exiting volcanoes, active or otherwise. Remember that volcano up in Iceland? Same thing. All right, keep the guest requests coming. I went out to dinner last night. Rita and I went out to dinner with Dr. J from Third Phase, and we talked for about 3 hours. And we talked about all kinds of different guests coming on the show, and it seemed like everybody that we were bringing up last night was something that I had read in an email. It kept my brain fresh. So I'm telling you, keep the guest request coming. This is bespoke radio for the masses, and there's a reason for that. Okay? All right? All right. Is that a deal? Oh, man. Okay, let's see here. 36 Twitter notifications have come in. Oh, Eric Van Doniken, yes. That's from Allison Bell. Eugene, I'd love to hear more of my name credited. Oh, man, for coming up with the deep underwater base moniker. All right, Eugene, I'll see what I can do, brother. Let's see. Space Boy, next Thursday. Yes. John Teeter, yes. I vote for Van Doniken. That comes in from Lou. I'm just scrolling down. Michael Anderson. Dale. Dale is in. Dale checked in tonight. All right, so Alejandro Rojas tomorrow night, by the way. I let that slip. That is going to be an extraordinary show, too, as well. All right, I'll catch up with the tweets here during the commercial break. I wanted to get to this message that I was sent privately from Anya Briggs. Now, Anya, not a channeler, used to be. More somebody that can use her psychic abilities to communicate. That's what she does. She does it for herself. She doesn't do it for other people. But what she does do is she posts the stuff that comes to her. And she heard through whatever sources that about the Malibu base. But she had already posted about it before. And what I mean is, and I went back and I read all of her postings and the dates on it, and it's really interesting stuff. And it was more about, and you can certainly go and check out her website and check out her blog, but it was more about something coming. Something is about to get announced this month, and possibly Marina Del Rey, maybe East Coast, maybe West Coast. Go and read it for yourself. But anyways, she sent this to me. And I have to admit that it was one of those things where you not only raise an eyebrow, but you can feel in your bones that, there's something to this, and you just got to figure it out. So this is what she wrote me. She said, I know you will probably think I am full of doo-doo. Oh, I censored, by the way. Sorry about that, Anya. I told you I wouldn't censor, but I did. I censored doo-doo. I know you probably think I'm full of doo-doo, but That remote viewer, she's talking about Edward Reardon, was right yet wrong about what is inside the undersea structure by Malibu. If that's what he is seeing, he's simply not going far enough then, or perhaps not getting enough context. There are structures, a base hidden behind inside this thing that are under the purview of the secret government. The military owns it. It used to be alien. It is now owned by the military. People think that's impossible, that the aliens are omnipotent and always win at everything. Always. But that is not the case. It was taken over by the U.S. military. And if I had to intuit, I would say about 50 years ago, there's a link to the U.S. military with this thing of a supernatural multi-dimensional nature. The secret branch of the military, when I refer to the military, of course. Blessings. P.S. Preston Dennett. Keep it coming. All right, so she goes on to say, I have to add that whatever it is still a co-joint, somewhat meaning partially, as in a few. I am seeing gray-type ETs who are probably programmed life forms, but could not be programmed, coexisting with secret space program humans. I am getting there. Some may be benevolent, Palladians, even working side by side, but unless you are sensitive to the energy, you probably wouldn't notice who or what they were, or if they're human. Very pretty human male, but human. Otherwise undistinguishable. One is a young-looking man who is probably about 100 with short brown hair, very tall, 6'4". There is some kind of benevolent assistance as well. Believe it or not, I don't know what this is, but what I want to say, or I am leaning more towards, is that he is assisting with what is being called the transition in a good way. Not an ominous New World Order way, a good way, a benevolent way. And now, like I said, this is what she sent me. This isn't what is on her blog. You have to go and check it out for yourself and see how things were interpolated for her to send me this. But it's very, very interesting. And again, Anya, thank you for that. And it was an eye-opener to go and read your blog, and I thank you for that. All right, normally I would take a break here before I read the news. I'm running out of time, so let me get some news in. Then we'll take a break, and we will come back with Dr. Stephen Greer. Don't forget, tomorrow night, Alejandro Rojas. Friday, Joe Buckman, and we will have a special guest appearance from remote viewer Edward Reardon. He's going to come on before Joe and discuss a little bit more in depth of what he did and did not see with the Malibu deep underwater base, the DUWB. Eugene, am I saying it right? Is it DUWB or is it DUWB? How do you say it? It's yours. You created the moniker, and if you want that title, tell me how to say it. All right, I wanted to say a couple of things about MH370. And over the weekend, I just went on a little conspiracy run and banged around the net and came up with the top 10. I almost feel like David Letterman. The top 10 most popular conspiracy theories about MH370 on the net. There's more, but as far as recognition goes, this is it. Number 10. A black hole time travel experiment. Number 9. Illuminati are using it to start World War III. Number 8. It is the Asian Bermuda Triangle. Number 7. Secret weapon test or drone took it down. Number 6. A fire was set by passengers. Number 5. Suicide by the pilots. Number 4. And remember, this is prevalence on the net. Number 4. Alien abduction. Number 3. MH370 had been hijacked and flown to Afghanistan, where the crew and passengers are now being held captive. Number 2, the plane landed at Diego Garcia or the Maldives. And that is a huge message going around the net. Huge. And number 1, the plane was accidentally shot down during a military operation. And that is the number 1 conspiracy theory on the net right now. And I'm not even going to comment. I've said it so many times. They don't say anything. We write our own story. Okay, let's see. What else? Oh, I wanted to mention this a few days ago about the Dragon V2, Elon Musk. And I've got to say, his contract and what he is doing with NASA and the government and the money that is being thrown around, our future in space looks like it's resting solely on the shoulders of this guy. And the Dragon V2, reusable, can transport as many as 7 astronauts for several days. It's an extraordinary spacecraft, and I don't know how or why. No, I'm not in any way, poo-pooing on what Elon is doing in SpaceX. But why couldn't we have gotten this done 20 years ago when we knew the space shuttle was going to phase its way out? I don't understand that, and we have this big gap. And, these engines, the Super Draco engine that he has developed, I'm glad it's him and we're not depending on the Russians anymore. He has got, I don't know how many billions of dollars that he has got wrapped up with the United States government and the deals that he has got worked out. But I just think the Dragon and what he has put together at SpaceX is extraordinary. And I'm just blown away by it. There's going to be more on this later. Now, Slender Man. I'm not going to get into the story. It's tragic. It's sad. It's frightening. But I went through a Slender Man phase a couple of years ago, and I did a bunch of reading of Slender Man stories on the net. I did. I went there and got scared out of my wits. And the drawings that people are doing, and nothing graphic. It's just what people are seeing in their dreams about Slender Man. Scary stuff. And I don't doubt for a second that somebody could have gotten sucked into it. I'm not saying I did. I'm just saying I got petrified. I got scared. Slender Man is scary. And that is a sad thing that went down in Waukesha. It's not too far from where I grew up in Chicago. I grew up in in Waukegan, North Chicago, and it's just right there across the border. And it's sad story. And I really got tired of reading it. Couldn't deal with it anymore. But Slender Man, I wish there was a way. I'm all about freedom of speech, but I really, truly, honestly wish there was a way to get some type of censorship to a 12-year-old brain and the susceptibility that you have at that age to read something that frightening. It's one thing to get scared as an adult, but to expose somebody that young, well, this is what you get. And it's a really, really sad story. So anyway, all right, with that, you know what? Let's take our break. Sounds good to me. Let's do it. When I come back, Dr. Stephen Greer. Tomorrow night, don't forget, Alejandro Rojas. Friday, Joe Buckman, Edward Reardon. Keep the tweets coming at JChurchRadio. Email Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. Come back after the break. Dr. Stephen M. Greer. Don't touch that mouse. This is Bespoke Radio for the Masses. Number one. We took over. We won. This is Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition. I'll be back right after this. Stay with us, everybody.
You're listening to Jimmy Church Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I gotta tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444, or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
On the Dark Matter Radio Network.
All right, let's go. Welcome back, everybody. Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Don't forget to tweet at JChurchRadio, hashtag DMRadioNet. Shoot us an email to Jimmy at JimmyChurchRadio.com. You can also do so on the website. Let's go. I am ready. Studio's dark. Dr. Stephen M. Greer is the founder and director of the Disclosure Project and Sirius Technology Advanced Research. He has presided over the groundbreaking U.S. National Press Club disclosure event in 2001. Dr. Greer is a lifetime member of the AOA, the United States' most prestigious medical honor society. He is also the author of 4 insightful books and multiple DVDs on the UFO ET subject. He has been seen and heard by millions worldwide on CBS, the BBC, the Joe Rogan Show, the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, Thrive, and the Ancient Aliens series. The film Sirius, which documents his work, has premiered in April 2013 and was the largest crowd-funded documentary to date. I would like to welcome to the program Dr. Stephen M. Greer. Dr. Greer, are you with us, sir?
Indeed.
How are you tonight? Everything good?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. You know, I was saying, well, to you, but also to the audience before the show, it just seems like the last couple of weeks, this show has been breaking news, just breaking news with the Malibu stuff and your announcement last week of the Aquarius documents. And now tonight we have some breaking news, which we're going to get to in a second. Well, actually, let's get the audience to wait a little bit for it. But we're going to do that, too, as well. But it seems to me exciting times right now in ufology and disclosure. What do you think?
Well, it is, and I think that what's happened over the last decade or so is that more and more people realize that the game is up, and there's a whole network of people who in the past have worked in aerospace or in the intelligence community or military who continue to try to work this subject for us, and a couple of these folks have come through with some information. In fact, what's unusual is that, as you know, we booked this interview, some weeks ago, and today in the mail I got another secret document that we'll get into in a moment, and that I really didn't know it was going to get here in time for this interview. But what I'm finding is that in the last 8 or 9 months, there's been increased interest in moving forward from the sort of mid-20th century dysfunction that kept all this secret. And, one of the things that sort of a bellwether for that for me has been the people who come forward from, if you want to call it mainstream society, have nothing to do with the UFO subculture. In the past 8 or 9 months or years since the film Sirius came out, And there was a group that hosts a meeting every year in an island in the Pacific that asked me to go and do the keynote for about 120 leaders from all over the world on specifically the UFO subject and the technological issues around the secrecy. In other words, the energy and propulsion systems that are behind how these objects move. That has been the central, not the only, but the central reason for the secrecy over the last 60, 70 years or so. So I think that, when you start seeing people like that taking it seriously and actually sticking their necks out, I have to say the organizers of this event, who were some of the people who originally founded the World Economic Forum in Davos and other big sort of international confabs, if you want to look at them that way, really did stick their neck out to have this subject highlighted, at this gathering that happens every year, and yet they did. And they truly believe in disclosure, and they truly believe it's time to move our civilization into a post-carbon, post-atomic power world. And I think that, this is beginning to resonate with larger and larger numbers of people.
Well, you and I have, talked before about what is it going to take, for the step off of the cliff when it comes to disclosure. What is it could be a multiple of smaller things, but it seems like with the amount of data from folks like yourself and this show and other researchers out there, that it's just going to get to the point where somebody somewhere on our side of the pond, I'm not talking about worldwide, I'm talking about the United States government, is going to have to throw up their hands and go, okay, you know what, we need to come clean. And I think we're getting close.
Well, I'm less optimistic about the government than I am about the people. And, I make a real distinction between the people of the United States and even the government that's elected and appointed by the people of the United States and the deep black world, the so-called unacknowledged special access projects, which is what they're actually called, that are deep black and are really in control of this. I think one of the problems is, I think I mentioned this to you before in meetings I've had with people like the CIA director and members of the Senate Intelligence Committee and people like this, people at the Pentagon who you would think would know about this, the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, the head of Intelligence, Joint Chiefs of Staff. All of these people I've met with who have been left out of the loop and been lied to about this subject are actually more scared than anything. And what they're afraid of, it's not they're afraid of the ETs, because I think, anyone who's not a crackpot understands that if they were hostile, we'd be done by now.
Right.
But the fact is that they're very afraid that there is this out-of-control group that has no problem engaging in illegal activity to maintain control and secrecy over the issue. And that is something that Eisenhower did warn us about. It's in the film Sirius where he says, beware the military-industrial complex. And then you fast forward to the day before 9/11, and the Secretary of Defense, Donald Rumsfeld, saying there's $2.3 trillion unaccounted for in the Department of Defense budget over the last few decades. Now, trillion, so now we're probably up to somewhere in the $4 trillion range. And it isn't as if, Donald Rumsfeld was some sort of, radical liberal that was against the military. He's a noted conservative, and he was Secretary of Defense for Bush and Cheney. However, he was lamenting this. And so I think people need to understand that in the United States, and to an extent, our key allies like the United Kingdom, Canada, Australia, where there's been a great deal of high-tech research and development that's very secret in the corporate sector, the compartmentalization of the secrecy, the super-secret programs that exist and the way they're managed, makes it very hard for what I call the white hats, the good guys that are in government, not just in the United States but in these other countries, to step forward. Why? Because as a CIA director pointed out to me, no president wants to admit something exists that he fundamentally doesn't have control over. And so, there has been no U.S. president that has had genuine operational control over these super secret UFO-connected projects since Truman. Eisenhower, it was on his watch that he lost control of them. And I think that this creates a dynamic where we have to rely on very heroic people, like the gentleman who supplied this document to me today, and others who know that the truth has got to come out, and the people need to know, and that it's going to happen by people who have had some connection to these covert programs stepping out. And that's when I founded the Worldwide Disclosure Movement 13 years ago, that was the main thrust of it, was to pull people together and to encourage them to do that. And there's really an interesting background that we may want to talk about, since we're going to start getting into some really, really sensitive documents. This one I have tonight is we haven't even had time to fully get it posted or anything yet. It just came in tonight. And it's an interesting document because it has so many aspects to it, even though it's quite brief, that are explosive, not least of which is the infiltration and corruption of civilian monitoring of UFOs that has happened since Project Blue Book closed in 1969. And this document admits that, and admits how it's being done and which entities are doing it. So I think that, it's really going to be up to people to come forward who want to blow the whistle on this. But I want to make a distinction between blowing the whistle on this issue and on other issues that have happened, such as the Snowden affair. And I want to talk a little bit. I don't know, this may be boring to you, but if it is, tell me to shut up. I'm fine to move on to another subject. But there was a lot of due diligence that we did between 1993 and 2001 to be able to come forward with the dozens and dozens of top-secret witnesses and documents that we have. And a big part of that was to go to the people who, in our constitutional legal system, most certainly should have known about these operations, and it turned out they did not. And so in 1998, I wrote what's called a UNOD letter. It stands for Unless Otherwise Directed. Anyone in the military listening will know what this is. And what that is, and a copy of this is in my first book that people can get at our website, SeriousDisclosure.com. And in that book, I have this letter that went to the heads of every agency and every department of the government and every key official in the U.S. government, return, receipt, requested. They had to sign for it. And the way an Unless Otherwise Directed letter works is that you write it in such a way that it states, unless I am directed otherwise, it is my assessment of that the following is true, and here is what we will do. So in this letter, I'm not going to read it to everyone because it would be boring. Basically what our team said was, we have discovered and can now prove, because of the very highest level meetings we've had, that the projects connected to UFO secrecy and the ET issue are illegal, are not being overseen by constitutionally appointed representatives, the president, the CIA director, members of the Intelligence Committee, et cetera, that we have met with, or even key people at the Pentagon who should know. And that, therefore, those projects that are unacknowledged are running illegally. And therefore, any documents, witnesses, people who have been in those projects, even if they've signed security oaths, are hereby liberated from the National Security Act and are free to speak of this without penalty and without fear of reprisal. And if we do not hear otherwise from you, this is to all these heads of the government, by a certain date in 1999, we are going to go forward with disclosing what we know. And that's what we did. And guess what? To this date, here we are in June of 2014, not a single one of the people who came forward or people who have handed these documents to us have been threatened, called, or even obliquely, put in the hot seat. Why? Because they came forward very publicly, and we had millions of people who learned about it. number one. But number two, we had done the due diligence for 5 or 6 years where we had established and begged members of the Congress and the president and people who are in senior intelligence positions like the CIA director to do something about this. But they, without any exception, said, how can we disclose something we don't have access to? And that when we've made inquiries about it, we've been lied to, and we know we've been lied to. So once you establish that, at that point, these folks really cannot then start wrapping themselves in the law, because if you're going to exempt yourself from the law and exempt yourself from the Constitution, you can at the same time wrap yourself in the National Security Act, because you cannot have it both ways. And that has been our position for the last 15 or 16 years, and that is why we continue to come forward with these sorts of witnesses and people and information.
Well, you bring up a very, very, very strong point, which is this: the president doesn't know everything, and when it comes to $1 trillion, that's right. When you're talking numbers like $1 or $2 trillion of black budget or missing money in the military, if you stop and think about that for a second, what he is disclosed to or of when he takes office, it would take 4 years, his entire presidency, for anybody to just sit there all day long and tell him about this project or this project. He just plain and simply wouldn't know. And so therefore he can claim ignorance on anything. You're asking him about a subject that he potentially knows absolutely, one of 1,000 programs that he knows absolutely nothing about.
Yeah, well, and this is the crown jewel of the secret programs, because it deals with the next generation in energy, propulsion, and technology. And when you're not talking about, a small incremental change in an existing science. We're talking about a huge quantum leap forward into areas of physics and areas of science that would give us a world more different from today than today is from the caveman era. In other words, I have often said that once this information and technology is brought forward, the world we will have will be more different than most people can imagine, because there will be no need for the current macroeconomic system. And that's the big problem, is that this subject, once it's acknowledged, think about it, we're not alone in the universe. Well, there's a big, big issue right there. But the fact that we have figured out the energy and propulsion behind how these UFOs move, and have had that knowledge for at least 60 years. Now, I have a man I've worked with for many, many years. He stayed at my home. I know his family, who's one of the highest-ranking officials and scientists at the Naval Research Labs in Washington, D.C., which is the largest Department of Defense lab. And he was in what they called the vault some years ago, when he saw a document where it pretty well established that we had mastered gravity control by October of 1954. Well, that's almost 60 years ago. And so here we are still flying around on junky things like jet engines, mm-hmm. and using cars that are burning oil and utilities that are burning coal. And the space shuttle, of course, it's retired now, but was this flimsy thing that killed numerous heroic astronauts, when we have had a replacement system for 60 years. And I think this is what Nick Cook, who wrote the book The Hunt for Zero Point, who wrote for Jane's Defense Weekly, a very prestigious defense journal, found, after some information that we had put out, he pursued it at Boeing, Phantom Works, and some of the other aerospace, and he had concluded the same thing, that in fact, this was really being researched in the late 40s and early 50s, of how so-called anti-gravity, it's not the proper term, it's electromagnetic-gravitic systems work, that give you lift and can movement the way you see UFOs move, and that basically all of that went super secret, deep black, because they actually had breakthroughs where they figured out how it happens by the early 1950s. And so we're living in a world. A lot of people think that what I'm, recommending that we do is very futuristic, and I'm going, no, we're trying to catch up with 60 years of our history and evolution that have been robbed from us as a species by the secrecy that has been so ruthlessly enforced.
Well,
and the only way I see that happening is for more and more truly heroic people who have been on the inside of these projects coming forward with documents, with information, with testimony, and doing it in increasing numbers.
When Ben Rich, that famous quote of his, which was, "We have the technology to take ET home."
Absolutely.
And I wish Ben Rich was alive today. I read his book Skunk Works, and I could tell he didn't care. He had lived his life. He was willing to put it out on the table. And
sure.
Now, really quick, before what I would like to do is 2 or 3 things here, is in kind of in order, which is the opposite of the way I do this show. This show is unorganized.
Right. All right.
But I want to go through the documents that were released last week. We had that on artbell.com as well as my website too as well. And so I want to kind of go through that to reintroduce those documents to everybody before we get to your breaking news, because we're going to spend, probably the majority of the evening on that document. So before we get to those 2 things, which I think all of this is tied together, is the discovery that Fade to Black made off of the Malibu coast. And I think it's fortuitous that for all of us that things seem to be coming together, and there are no coincidences at the same time. So let's talk briefly about what your thoughts are on what's going on off of the Malibu coast. I know that you've looked at the stuff and you've been following the breaking news all week too as well. So what do you think? What do you think we're looking at out there?
To be honest with you, there's a few threads I want to connect. I have a member of my team that lives up the coast from there in Santa Barbara, has an oceanfront home, who has filmed objects zipping by that area of the California coast for many, many years, and also of objects going in and out of the water. Now, what's interesting is that some of the objects that he has filmed, he feels are classified U.S. Experimental objects, or not so experimental now, that are anti-gravity, that move at enormous velocity, but that some of them clearly are not and appear to be extraterrestrial origin. The other thing that I note is that there have been a lot of reports over the years, including one of the military advisors I've had for many years, who is on a naval vessel in the Pacific, where these underwater ET craft were seen and came up right beside his boat, and then large ship, and then was tracked on radar going out into space. And so there has been a long-term record from very credible sources. Dan Willis, who's one of the Disclosure Project witnesses, also was at a station in San Francisco monitoring traffic when there was a naval vessel that reported an object that came up out of the ocean and was tracked. They tracked going out into space at enormous velocities and disappeared into space. So these underwater UFOs have been reported all over the world, but there has been a lot of them over the years reported off the California coastline. Now, that particular object, or area that's in the images, I'm not a satellite imaging specialist by any means, and from what it certainly looks to me like some kind of an artificial structure. And I think, of course, what ideally one would want to do was send a submersible with very high-quality camera equipment down there to take a look at it. But the other thing that strikes me about it is that it looks very old. It doesn't look like something of recent construction, at least in how I looked at the images.
Right.
But But this might go along with the idea that, there are historical accounts, some believe are mythical, sort of like the Shambhala kingdom,
Right.
but out in the Pacific, that there were land masses and there were civilizations that existed out in the Pacific that very many eons ago sunk and were continents. Some call them Lemuria or Mu, and one wonders if this is some remnants of some very, very, very ancient prehistoric, at least prehistoric to us, modern civilization, structures that may have existed from a pre-existing era that may have been millions or even hundreds of millions of years ago. I mean, people seem to forget, there's been life on this planet for hundreds of millions of years, and there have been land masses that have come and gone, and I think there have been other civilizations on this planet that have come and gone. So whether this is a contemporary finding, meaning that it's something that is currently being utilized, or whether it's the remnants of a very ancient structure from a time when that area of the coast was above sea level, is, nobody knows. But those are just my thoughts looking at it.
Well, and the other thing, and you touched, I think this is something that needs to be addressed and not ignored. You're going to have debunkers and skeptics out there that are going to look at these images, no matter how much I preach on the soapbox that these are the clean files and, not manipulated. You can look at the same images yourself. No matter how much I say that, you're going to have people, saying that these are photoshopped and it's fake and it's not real. Sure. Well, but the one thing that needs to be addressed for all of them is the prevalence of sightings and videos and photography, witness testimony, going back to Ronald Reagan, up and
right.
down the coast, and the entrances and the entrance. I want to say three things at one time: the entering and leaving of the water. Not only that, but you don't have to leave the water in front of this anomaly. The craft, whether it's a USO, UFO, government, ET, or otherwise, can head hundreds of miles out into the ocean before the egress. And that is another point. Your friend up in Santa Barbara, absolutely. Santa Barbara is another 50 miles up the coast or 40 miles from where this is.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they were leaving. And I think you understand. Your friend is watching them leave the water up there. It's a very simple thing to deduce from all of this. Just because the entrance is where we have found it, possibly an entrance, doesn't mean, the USOs we see in Hawaii could be coming and going from here. They just happen to leave the water somewhere else in the Pacific Ocean. And that's a point
the other thing is that people have to understand the physics behind the propulsion systems we're talking about, where going through water, for that matter, going through solid matter, is not really a problem. And the reason for that is the very high voltage systems that alter the atomic spin and angular momentum of, say, a spacecraft and everyone on it. So it can be altered so a solid object can go straight through another solid object or go through the water or the air without creating a sonic boom or a big pressure wave in the water or a big pressure wave in the air. And we understand the physics of this, frankly, quite well. I mean, I've sat with a lot of people who've been in these classified labs who've done experiments with this, including people at the Naval Research Labs and the Redstone Arsenal and the Huntsville Space Flight Center and other places. So if you understand that science, and I won't get into it too far because it does get very arcane, but basically you can create a bubble in space-time, if you want to look at it that way, through which these objects are moving, that they create around them, so that it can move under the water at enormous velocities and not cause a wake and not cause any disturbance. Interestingly, some years ago, there was a Disclosure Project witness who was a Navy guy who had been on a nuclear submarine, and they were going on a mission to look for, and the euphemism used were magnetic anomalies under the water. And there were a few strange things about this expedition. One was that The very last person to get on the submarine, this is a U.S. Navy nuclear submarine, was someone from the Vatican wearing a priest collar.
Oh, really?
Yeah, very strange.
Yes.
And they went out in I believe it was the South Atlantic, if I recall, and they went and they were searching for the electromagnetic signature of these underwater ET craft. And they went to an area where they found them. And there were a couple of them that came on either side of this large nuclear-powered submarine, and basically were able to create an energy field where they suspended it, where he said that they could not go up, down, forward, back, any direction. And then they took off, and he says, and they got lost track of them, but they tracked them going at over 450 knots under the water, but not creating any wake. Now, that's the speed of a jetliner under the water. So, you're dealing with a physics that would allow for that. And there's a medical doctor who was a very good friend of mine. He's since passed away of cancer, but he was a well-known physician in the Denver area who was also a pilot. And he recounted this experience he had near Blanca Peak, where I've taken the CSETI contact teams, and we've had a lot of contact events up there at Blanca Peak up in Colorado. Is the third highest peak in the state, in southern Colorado. And he was flying a private plane, and broad daylight, crystal clear skies, and suddenly this massive ET craft materialized right near his plane, and it was a little small private plane. His magnetometer started going crazy, his gyro, everything on board his plane started having all kinds of electromagnetic anomalies, and he had some kind of contact event. And in fact, he got in a little bit of trouble with air traffic control because he went into a blackout mode where he was incommunicado for a period of some minutes. Well, when finally the way this event ended is that this massive object that he said was several hundred feet in diameter, sort of disc or somewhat disc-shaped, no seams, completely seamless, sun shining on it, flew right over to about two-thirds of the way up to the top of Blanca Peak. At tremendous speed, and then disappeared inside the mountain. He thought it was going to crash because this thing looked fully 3D materialized, and yet it moved away from him and went straight into that mountain without so much as any sort of disturbance of the mountain. And we talked about that, and I told him, I said, yes, but you have to understand that most, quote, solid matter is in reality, quote, empty space, except the space isn't empty. In other words, I'll tell you, Jimmy, if you collapsed all the solid matter of your physical body and took out all the space out from between the molecules and atoms,
Mm-hmm.
the matter of your body, say you weigh 150, 200 pounds, would fit on the tip of a needle, just a speck. That's all the solid mass that is in your physical body. The rest of your physical body is what? Well, it's this matrix of energy folded within space-time. So if you can manipulate that, if you can alter that, a solid object can go straight through another solid object or through the water and into the earth without a disturbance. And that's what we're talking about when we're talking about these very, very advanced extraterrestrial technologies.
Well, for me, it would be 3 heads of the needle. You haven't had my wife's cooking, and
oh, okay. Well, whatever. I mean, it would maybe be 1.5, but it'd be a tiny speck. That's all you are.
It's mind blowing, isn't it?
Empty space.
Yeah, it's mind blowing, and we're basically look at people think a car is solid. It's the most unsolid thing you can imagine.
Yeah, well, it's all about densities, and it's
That's
all
right.
about what is actually in the subatomic level of space that is supporting the structure of atoms, of subatomic particles, quarks and whatnot, that are phasing in and out of this kind of multipotent field of energy. Well, once you get to that level of understanding and can control for it, you can have a solid object go straight through another solid object. You can create an energy so that that object becomes weightless and therefore can accelerate. And then once you become truly weightless, massless, if you look at your formulas in physics, speed is inversely proportional to mass. So the heavier something is, the slower it is given the amount of energy you have to put into it to get it moving. So if you have something that becomes, quote, massless, which is what we're talking about, no mass, it literally, quote, disappears or dematerializes, and is then functioning in a, if you will, another dimension, a parallel dimension that is within this one. And that's why many times people see these ET craft. They'll be there, and they don't just move off. They just vanish. They disappear. But they haven't, quote, disappeared. It's not like they're not there. It's just that the human eye can't see that they've crossed over what I call the crossing point of light. I wrote an entire paper about the crossing point of light and all the different phenomena that comes about when you go beyond. It's like beyond the speed of sound, beyond the speed of light. Well, you know, people will argue that you can't do that, and they're correct in terms of normal physics, but when you're and in terms of speeding up incrementally. But if you create a very high voltage resonant field with certain materials, you can shift completely out of 3D and into another dimension. And that's how these objects, by the way, are going from one star system to another. There's no way they can go even at the speed of light and go, you know, from 100,000 light years away to here. It's not possible. So you're talking about a type of physics that it really has been studied by some brilliant people, but unfortunately it isn't taught at MIT, and it's certainly not taught at in your normal educational system because it's all been classified. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It does exist. And the proof of it is the empirical evidence of how these ET craft move, including this phenomenon of them moving at enormous velocities and appearing in the water and going through solid matter and going into the earth. For example, when we were down in Mexico some years ago, we witnessed a disc-shaped object, more than one, emerging out of and going into that giant volcano outside Mexico City, Popocatépetl, I believe is how they say it. It's Popo for short. It's an 18,000-foot high, fourth, I think, highest volcano in the world, and it's where there's been huge waves of UFO sightings near Atlisco and Puebla and that whole area. And we went there on several expeditions and witnessed this firsthand. And, you know, you would think, how can these things be going straight into this volcano? But that's what we witnessed.
The interest and the money that it would take to take any type of free energy or 0 point or anti-gravity thing that has been suppressed, where, you know, the big dollar companies, the petrodollar companies especially, right, for them to make money on it until, I mean, look, you could have the coolest software program ever and want to give it away free, but you're not, no venture capitalist is going to step forward with his billions if his first question is, okay, how do we make money on it? And it's the same thing that you're up against. Is there a way? I don't want to look at this in jest, but is there a way to monetize free energy? Is there a way to attract some type of development into the technology?
We tried that. You know, we're still waiting. But most people, when they realize who they're going to be going up against, get a little intimidated. But I think that the technology, yes, of course it can be monetized. Even if it's open source, it can be monetized, just as you have open source software that's been monetized. I think that's not the problem. The problem is the powers that be understand. I'll make it very simple for everyone listening. Let's say you have a Chevy Suburban or a pickup truck, and that thing's getting 12, 15, 18 miles per gallon. And the engine in it's worth maybe $5,000. You know, I mean, it's fundamentally the same internal combustion system with a few more bells and whistles that existed in the late 1800s.
Right.
And the engine, while it only costs maybe is worth a few $1,000s, over the life of that vehicle being on the road, it's going to use $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 worth of petroleum. So the money isn't in the widget, the engine. The money's in the supply line of energy, which is a huge issue because that's the petrodollar centralized energy and macroeconomic system. And we're talking now trillions, not billions, trillions of dollars. So all of that would go, frankly, the way of royal typewriters and horse and buggies. I mean, you know, it'd be an interesting thing in the museum and oil would only have utility for plastics and synthetics and things of this sort. In other words, a tiny fraction of what's actually consumed. So I think this begins to be an enormous problem, because so many of our policies, we talk about our, quote, vital national security interests in the Middle East. Well, that's just bureaucratic speak for oil. I mean, it's not that we're concerned about the camels. We're not concerned about, it's not like they're date palms we're trying to protect. It's oil.
Right.
And so that one word is our vital national security interest in the Middle East. Of course, Israel is there, too, as an ally, but they've got 200 or 300 nuclear weapons. I mean, I'm quite confident. I lived there for 3 years. I have no question they can take care of themselves.
Right.
But, the point I'm making is that the oil politics and the petrodollar politics and the macroeconomic system would have to change. So the central, there's this statistic that came out a few months ago from Davos, the World Economic Forum, where they said, look, there are 85 individuals that have the net worth of 3.5 billion people on Earth, half the population of Earth. But there was a Swiss institute a few years ago that found that there's actually just, a couple dozen corporations and families that are horizontally and vertically integrated that actually control most of the wealth of the world. And this is not a conspiracy theory. It's just the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a sense, we're all sort of, I hate to say this, we're all slaves on someone's big macroeconomic plantation. And if you introduce something like free energy, well, this would be a tide that would lift people out of poverty. We would clean up the environment. But the centralized power game that's played would change, and it would change, frankly, forever. So that's the problem. As far as getting funding for the research and development of these technologies, that's been something we've been trying to do for a number of years, and I think that a lot of it has to do with people. It's a chicken-egg thing. They want to see an operational device before they fund it, or if they want to fund the research and development, they're concerned that, someone might come knocking on their door and threaten them. This is why I think ultimately this is another reason why at some point the public's going to have to pony that up. It's one or two people doing it makes them rather conspicuous. And I think at this point that wouldn't be a problem, but it's enough of a concern that it has intimidated some people.
Well, it does seem that anybody that has successfully developed or tapped into a technology and tried to go public with it, I mean, this isn't new news, but they seem to disappear in one strange way or another, whether they're, they die or they're bought out and and disappear with the money. But nonetheless, there's that stigma, that legend, I should say, about it. Do you, and you're in shape, you're a big guy, but do you travel with bodyguards? Are you ever afraid of that type of intimidation yourself?
Well, there's been a lot of that kind of intimidation, but if I don't get intimidated that way. Yes, when I'm doing a big public event, there are security people for me, but I don't worry about that because, if these guys want you gone, in a sense, I guess you're gone.
Right.
I have my own philosophy about this is that if there are enough people who are supportive of what you're doing within these circles, they're not going to make a big mistake like that. It would be the worst thing they could do. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay, well, that's fair.
So, but I think for the average person, the person working out of their garage, tinkering on this, who then has some goons show up, and I know men who've worked in projects like this, small ones or small corporations or university labs, and someone shows up with a national security order, and they flat out tell you, here's what you're going to do, or else. What are you going to do? So now, this is another reason why, now that there's millions of people who know what we're doing and are supportive, and, I can send something out and get it to a lot of people suddenly. My view of it is that the research and development for these technologies needs to be open source, and the research lab needs to be streamed on the Internet in real time. I think that the biggest mistake people have made over the last 50 years is that, and this is happening right now with Rossi and a few others, is that they tried to keep the technology a trade secret and they can keep it secret. If you keep it secret, one or two things are going to happen. it's going to be acquired and put on a black shelf by somebody, or you're going to end up dead. The safest path, ironically, is to be as completely disclosing and open about it as you possibly can, which is why I'm going to tell you, when I got this document today, the guy who got it to me says, now this is something you may not want to put this out there to the public. I said, like hell I'm going to sit on something like this. Now, the thing is that a lot of people would rather some of this information be kept out of the public domain. But ultimately, I think there's safety in not keeping it secret. It's the opposite of what people think. And so if you're working on a technology like this, you really want to have a few million people know you're doing it. You don't want to be doing this thing quietly and in the dark of night, because that's how terrible things happen. And here's another irony. Your obscurity is your Achilles heel. If you're obscure and no one knows, or very few people know what you're doing, then it's very easy to make you go away. And I think that's what scientists and anyone listening who understands the power of the people, having a lot of people know what you're doing and support it, is in itself incredibly protective. And actually that was one of the central philosophies behind the Disclosure Project, is that I didn't want to come forward with one or two people or one or two documents. I wanted to come forward with dozens of these top secret guys and their documents and their DD-214s that prove that they were in the military when they said they were, et cetera, and so on. And that's what we did, because if we had done it in a sort of drip, drip, drip fashion, that's not as safe. Now we've kind of broken the ice on that and done it, and it's continuing to happen. And I think that what I'd encourage anyone who's working in the Skunk Works, or what we call the Cube, for Lockheed there in the high desert outside Los Angeles, or any of these other areas, is that anything they want to get to me, they should reach out to me and we'll make it happen. Same thing with testimony and documents, and for that matter, material of any kind. But so far, the material has been very rare in happening. As you know, a former CIA director, Bill Colby, was going to provide an operational free energy device to our group and some seed funding so we could get it out back in the 1990s. And the week he was going to meet with a member of my board, they found him floating down the Potomac River outside Washington. But
somebody that you would have assumed, could be deemed untouchable. Yeah, William Colby.
Well, here's the problem. I mean, this the cabal, this so-called MJ-12 or Majestic group, will eat their own if they need to. And unfortunately, at that time, it was sort of a blind date. It was a secret meeting, which I do not like, and I didn't like it at the time. I was very uncomfortable with it. And but he was an old spy master, and that's how he wanted to do it. I think it actually increased the risk for him and not decreased it, because the folks who monitor this issue, I don't care if you're on top of Mount Everest and you're talking to a friend about this, they're going to hear it and they're going to know it. And that is absolutely true. And I think that people have to get over this delusion that they're going to be able to sort of do anything and keep it secret from these characters. So it's safer just to be more bold. The bolder you are, ironically, the safer you are.
Well, you've been doing the same thing with these Aquarius documents, and also, and you and I were talking about this earlier today, with everything that me and the team here have done with this Malibu discovery, from the word go, we went public. We put that stuff out. We dated it. Everything, the coordinates, just in case anything happened, whatever, if Google Earth or DOD decided to step in and start clouding out things or removing or changing things, that we had it documented and it was out there in the public. And, thank goodness that the internet does what it does. When something takes off and runs, that's I can't decide that, and you can't decide that. The internet decides what it's going to spread. And we got lucky with this, and you've been doing the exact same thing. How long With the first set of Aquarius documents that you put up last week, how long were you sitting on those before you went public?
24 hours.
Exactly.
Like
Exactly. And just like today, with this release of this newest document, you received it today in the mail, and you are talking about it tonight, and I'm assuming it's translated, transcribed, and done, and then everything else is going on your site tomorrow. I'm just guessing here, but could I be wrong?
Yes, I think people should go to SeriousDisclosure.com in the next day or two, and I will have it up there under the evidence bar on the top of the front page where there are documents. And I will also point out that this document confirms the existence of Project Aquarius, but that we'll get into that in a moment. Now, of course, there's been a lot of trash talk about all of this, saying that these are all hoax documents, and there's a lot of armchair analysis. Had I not gotten these documents from the source I did, and also the fact that there was a Colonel Robert Friend who was in Project Grudge and Project Blue Book who confirmed the existence of Project Aquarius. There's a Defense Intelligence Agency official who's confirmed its existence. And there's also a file of FBI and intelligence investigations of William Moore and this Lee Graham, who initially released a transcript of these documents. Mm-hmm. It's very unusual, I might point out, for there to be an investigation on something if the documents are, in fact, just concocted out of whole cloth. Now, the other thing that's happened in the last couple of weeks is that two separate people have come forward who have a forensic level understanding of type fonts and printer matrix printers and the kind that would have been used for the time period in the 1970s of when these Aquarius documents were allegedly created. And they have stated that it is absolutely consistent with that time period, the technology that existed then, and the type of font used then. So now, could someone go to an elaborate extent to hoax them? Sure. But it's sort of Occam's razors. I think sometimes the most likely explanation is the simplest one, all things taken equally. And the reality is, unless it is officially released by the government, or someone is willing to say, I was in the vault and I took these documents and gave them to you, then, you don't know. And so I've always said to people, I have to be somewhat agnostic about it, only because I don't know the person who originally acquired the documents from whatever classified facility. Now, that's different from, if you look at my first book, Extraterrestrial Contact, The Evidence and Implications. That has a top-secret document about Marilyn Monroe and why and who killed her and why, basically. But that has to do with the Roswell event that she was going to expose after Kennedy had told her about it. And that document had all the correct project code names and code numbers as of the early 1960s. And it was given to me by someone who had direct access to the vault at the National Security Agency that I know personally. So that, even though it was not a declassified document and it's top secret, I know it to be authentic.
For everybody out there, let's start kind of from the beginning, and let's go to this first set of documents. But for the new listeners out here, because we're going to start going through these documents, what is Project Aquarius?
Well, if you go to SeriousDisclosure.com, SIRIUSDisclosure.com, our website, at the top bar it says ET Evidence. If you hit that, put your cursor over it, the first thing will say Project Aquarius documents. And you'll be able to see these for yourself. They're all up there for anyone who wants to look at them. And, these documents were allegedly a briefing for an executive who was coming into some agency, now we don't know which one, about this particular Project Aquarius, which was a project allegedly studying the ET issue and specifically dealing with biological life forms and research. This document, which is only, I believe, 11 pages, is apparently, if it is in fact legitimate, was a document that was geared towards the briefing of an incoming, this would be my assumption, incoming executive. Now, was it an executive within the CIA, the NSA, the Department of Defense? I do not know. It doesn't say who the executive briefing was for, but that's what it is. So it's a summary, and it basically summarizes everything from the 40s up through the 70s in a very, very terse way, and people can read it, and goes through what the projects have been attempting to do, and the study of the technologies and the extraterrestrial life forms, and et cetera, and so on. So and the information in it is substantially correct. Now, some people have pointed out some of it's not correct, and I said, well, it depends on who was doing the briefing and who was the target. For example, we know that Ronald Reagan was briefed somewhat on the ET issue, but it was tailor-made, according to a colonel I know who was there, to get him to support the SDI, Star Wars Technologies, to target ET craft and shoot them down. So, in other words, whoever creates, who's the fox guarding the hen house? In the case of this document, one has to ask the question, let's assume for a moment it's authentic. Who was being briefed, and how was this summary written, and was there a psychological conditioning purpose to it?
Right.
Is there information in there that's valid? Yes. Is there information in there that may be overly simplified or not quite correct? Probably, because depending on who this person was, it might have been someone who was going to be in that command for a very brief period of time, or who was someone new to the subject and they didn't want to overwhelm them. For example, it talks about this one type of species. When I know, and of course other people who are in the Disclosure Project witness pool have said that it's known that there are multiple different civilizations that are visited and are visiting the planet. Well, maybe that would have been too overwhelming. Maybe they had a psychological reason not to disclose all of that in an executive initial briefing that's a historical overview.
Right.
So there are a lot of things that you could say to complain about the document, but there's a lot to be spoken for it, and particularly the fact that there's someone would have had to have gone to some heck of a trouble to get the dot matrix printer and the fonts and everything correct, and would have had to know this to have created this document, decades later. And so I'm a little skeptical that, in fact, it's an outright hoax, which is what some have said it is. On the other hand, some people have said the information isn't completely correct, and to which I say, well, how, if you're covering a subject this vast, how thorough and correct can it be if it's only, 9 or 10 or 11 pages?
How did the cash come to you? Was it in digital form, or did you actually have documents in hand?
No, it was physical. It was delivered. It was a physical delivery.
So what we are looking at here, and I've looked at this so much and read everything so many times now, but were these, so you didn't scan them? These images here are photographs? It looks like...
So what I got were things that are glossy photographs of the document, just as people see it. And then we tried to scan it the best we can so that people could see it, and then did a transcription under each page so you can read it.
Who did the transcription, by the way? Some of it is very difficult to read. Are the copies that you have just a little bit more legible?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Okay.
Than what we can do with we have not a very good scanner. I mean, you have to understand I'm doing this out of my home. I mean, this is not something...
Oh, I totally understand. I'm just...
people have these delusions of grandeur. I said, if I had a fraction of the budget of the ER I used to be chairman of, we could do this stuff better. But
well, rumors were, I heard you're making $1 million a day, Dr. Greer.
Oh yes,
yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing is so hilarious. I swear you're going to leave a chairmanship of emergency and trauma medicine to do this stuff and get vilified all over the world and make nothing. But, people have all their, conspiracy theories. But I think that the document, the one we have is more readable than what you see here, but you can read it substantially. But what we got, just so I'm clear, was a photograph. They were glossy photographs of the documents, and that's what I got. They were not paper. They were glossy.
Okay, now let's really quick before I get into these documents specifically, and then of course the one that you got today, and the suspense we've been holding off. But I want everybody to understand. You made this announcement last week. We had this interview set up for probably about a month now. So the things that have transpired recently, like I said, it seems like it's coming down like rainfall right now, which is great. But so you and I haven't had a chance to actually talk about the not only last week but this week on the release of these documents. Now, the sender of these documents, I don't care. Well, I do care, but you're not going to tell me. But do you know this individual and you trust this individual?
Oh, yeah, I've known this person for 15 years, and he's someone who's, had clearances and has worked in the aerospace industry and has a vast network of people.
And I know that you trust this individual. I just want you to, let everybody else know where, that this wasn't from somebody anonymous. This was somebody that you know.
No, and it's someone I've known for a long time and has been involved with Disclosure Project since the late 90s, early 2000 period. And he routinely meets with, in the work he does now, the generals and senior people. Although he's not in the same position he was in years ago when he was in the aerospace industry. Another thing I learned today, by the way, if you know the story of the Disclosure Project, and these documents refer to some of the work that was being done on the technologies. At Norton Air Force Base in California, there were, according to Brad Sorensen and, of course, Mark McCandlish, a hangar, an area where there were 3 reverse-engineered craft that were man-made in that hangar. And I've had a good friend of Frank Carlucci's confirm to me that he was there in the hangar there at the time when Brad Sorensen was, and that those documents that relate to when that was decommissioned, as well as all the activities that had happened related to the so-called Roswell event and other documents, are in a subterranean area of the Pentagon known as Crystal, 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 and that we've had that confirmed that there is this crystal where these are kept. And if there's anyone who has knowledge of this Project Crystal, or Area Crystal, actually, that's a compartment, that would be very good to get confirmed, because that's something we have also just learned recently.
Well, anybody out there, Crystal, Project Crystal, room, please, contact us.
It's where all the documents and all the materials were eventually sent from that decommissioning of Norton Air Force Base. By the way, there were 3 what they call ARVs, alien reproduction vehicles, that were floating just silently in this big hangar. One was, I believe, around 25, 30 feet. One was 50 feet. One was about 100 feet in diameter. And they were the late 50s or early 60s versions of the covert U.S. Anti-gravity craft that we had. They certainly would have be more advanced today. But, we have multiple people who confirmed that, and that was at Norton Air Force Base, which has since closed. It was decommissioned, I believe, during the Clinton years.
What do you think are the chances of another part of a disinformation campaign? MJ12 is real, it's not real. You've now been released new documents with MJ and Magic referenced in it. And is it a way to further, as far as what happened with the William Moore, that's a whole nother subject. We can certainly address that. But then you got to throw in Bill Doty and all of the other truth, untruth. You just don't know. They spin it so many different times. both
but what
public.
happens also if some true information comes out, they rush to put out a lot of other material that is discrediting and disinformation. There was a man who used to be the right-hand aide to General Odom, O-D-O-M, who was the head of the National Security Agency for years. And this man is my document guy. He's the guy that I go to like the Marilyn Monroe document I referred to. Gave that to him and said, look, what the heck's going on here? And he said, short of me seeing it taken right out of the vault, this is 95% authentic. Now, what he said is something to me years ago. It was very interesting. He said that whenever there's anything that's true that begins to go out, they'll actually set up what they call a DDT operation, like the poison, the pesticide DDT.
Right.
And that stands for you set up a decoy, you distract people, and then you put out information that'll trash the true part of it as well. So the DDT operations are run on something when it begins to come out. So, personally, I have been DDT'd for 20 years, but you have people, you have documents, you have cases, you have information that gets DDT'd. For example, the Benowitz affair, which is actually referred to in this new document I have, was a cover story because there was a woman who saw one of these man-made UFOs near Kirtland Air Force Base in the Sandia area outside Albuquerque. And she was subsequently abducted by military, made to look like an alien abduction. Paul Benowitz got hold of this, and he got so flummoxed by it, he ended up in a mental hospital.
Right.
I'm making a very long story very short.
Yes, you
but
are.
The bottom line is that it was all part of a, if you will, not a sting, but a DDT operation on something that the core of it was that there was a woman who saw wee hours of the night one of our, not ET, but our anti-grav vehicles maneuvering at very close range, and they did not want her to speak about it, so they created the cover story that she was abducted.
Well, and they did the same thing with Benowitz, and
of course.
And what Doty did, and I don't know if Doty's conscience bothers him today because he was just doing his gig. I don't know, but the whole thing was what the United States citizens have to understand. This went down inside of our borders, as tragic and crazy as it was. That was our government run a little bit amok, trying to obviously cover up. Benowitz saw something, and she saw something, and
sure, absolutely,
yeah. And whether it was ours or theirs, it doesn't matter. They just wanted these people to look crazy, and make in a public forum, just to cover their tracks. So, like I was saying earlier, you just don't know.
That way can be discredited. So
right. You don't know what's true.
And that's exactly what you expect with the DDT operation. And so what I think has happened is that you will have authentic, let's say, documents or information come out, and then there'll be a whole lot of confusing other information and hoax material that comes out. And I liken this to, you have a gold nugget, and it's the real deal. And these guys come in and dump a mountain of fool's gold on top of it, and hope no one's doing an assay. And it becomes so obfuscated and confusing that people just throw up their hands. And that's actually been part of what has been the plan from the get-go, is that they know at a certain level, you have 5-10% of the U.S. population that have seen a UFO. So at a certain point, you got to hide it in plain sight by putting out multiple layers of disinformation. So it goes way beyond just denying it. It's doing active counterintelligence operations that will obfuscate something that's legitimate. And, of course, all of us are subject to being caught up in something like that. And that's why when I released the Project Aquarius documents, the first thing I said was, while the source is very good, information within the documents, a lot of it we know to be true. There are a few inaccuracies in it. There are some misspellings and typos in it, but the government people can't make the typos. But at the same time, without knowing the exact provenance of the documents, and that's why I'm put out a call for that, as I have with everything else that we've gotten like this. unless I know who actually acquired the document and handed it off to me from the vault or from the direct class. If it's an indirect handoff, like the Project Aquarius, even though it's from a very good source, I still have to say we need more information, and I put out a public call, if you read what I wrote, for people to come forward who have information, forensic information, witnesses. Now, since then, as I mentioned, it's gotten confirmed to us that Colonel Friend has confirmed the existence of Project Aquarius, and then today I receive a document that confirms Project Aquarius.
Yeah, that's right. And what if you were offered the original documents and take possession of them? Would you do that? Would you be the?
Oh, sure.
You would.
Yep,
you would do that.
I can meet anywhere and do that, and I have done that with material before, and so why not? Again, we're on the side of the angels, and I remember there was a former head of Army intelligence that was very upset when I first started doing this stuff. And actually what he was most upset about, Jimmy, I'll be honest with you, wasn't disclosure material. It was the contact protocols we have, which are highly efficacious. Now, we were out on a beach in Florida, and 4 of these ET craft materialized and popped into view in front of 50 people. And the head of Army intelligence finds out about this and has me come to a meeting and says, "So what the hell are you doing?" And I said, "Well, look, we're free citizens of the Earth and of the cosmos as far as I'm concerned." And he said, of course, I had no right to be doing this in U.S. territory. I said, "Oh, sure I do." I said, "Because the projects you've been part of are illegal." I said, and if you get in my way, you'll be the guy at Leavenworth.
What was What was his response to that?
Well, he just looked at me and said, "God, we know who this guy is," because I wasn't going to be intimidated by that kind of nonsense. Because it happens to also be the truth.
Right.
But the idea is that they want people to be intimidated, and there have been a few times where it's gotten pretty gnarly for me. But by and large, my view of it is that these folks don't have a leg to stand on, because I always harken back. I had someone ask me not long ago in an interview. I was a meeting, a lecture up in New York City, and a man asked me, who green-lighted you to be doing this? And why the hell are you doing this? You're a doctor, And I said, well, in 1997, I was briefing the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff with Edgar Mitchell there, astronaut Edgar Mitchell, and several military people. And the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, J2, someone who absolutely should know, had, based on a document I have that names magic in it, and that's on our website also under documents. It's the very first document that was in the briefing I put together for President Obama, by the way. I did not have that document when I put together materials for Clinton and his CI director. But that document mentions magic by name and Majestic, and also a number of other blackjack control and blackjack team and other things that I know to be compartmented operations out of Nellis Air Force Base and Edwards Air Force Base that deal with the ET issue. So what I said to this gentleman was that when I gave this document to the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Admiral Wilson, he made an inquiry through channels because he recognized one of the compartment numbers or code names, although he didn't know what they did. And he got hold of a contractor. He wouldn't tell me who. I can guess. And basically, he said, "Look, I'm Admiral Wilson. I'm J2, head of intelligence Joint Staff. I want to be read into, which means briefed, on this project." And the person on the other side, end of the phone said, "Yes, Admiral, we know who you are. You don't have a need to know." And he said, "Damn it, how can I not have a need to know? I'm the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States." And they said, "Sir, we will not discuss this with you further," and they hung up on him. So by the time Edgar Mitchell and I got to this meeting, this admiral was so scared and so mad. And at the end of it, he turned to me and he said, "Dr. Greer, as far as I'm concerned, the people running these projects are rogue, and they're operating outside the law and the chain of command, and you have my permission." Now, this is sitting at the Pentagon. "You have my permission to disclose anything you get and anyone who's willing to come forward with this information, because these guys are criminals." And actually, that was that was in the spring of 1997. That was 17 years ago in April. So what I tell people is that they should not be intimidated by the fact that even if they were a cog in this machine and signed a security oath, if they have information about these projects, they need to step forward, because the operations are being run completely off the reservation of the rule of law and our Constitution.
You ready to read this document? Yeah, I can blow up Twitter right now and say, let's wait another 5 minutes.
You can. It's your show, man. I mean,
no.
I'm happy to go through it. It's just a page-and-a-half document, but it's a very interesting.
Well, we have so many things to set up. I want everybody to be very clear, and addressing Paul Benowitz is something that needs to get out of the way, and Magic and Majestic and MJ and 12, 12, 12 and the significance of all of that. You know what I mean? It's something that needs to be because these documents are significant and potentially earth-changing kind of stuff. And you just can't just read it because it doesn't make sense to anybody that doesn't have some basic backgrounds. Oh, I wanted to ask you really quick. If you were Paul Benowitz, would you have lost your mind?
Well, I've gone through a lot worse than he did. I don't know if I would have lost my... Look, I mean, I think part of it is what anyone is prepared for. And for a lot of people who don't know a lot about this subject, when they have an operation like that run on them, it's very, very stressful.
Totally.
And I think everyone, has their strengths and their weaknesses. So, I can't really comment on that. But, from what I know about it, no. Because I've actually had worse things run on me, but I think that far worse. But I think that the issue is how prepared was he for what happened, and I think that's really the tragedy. There are a lot of people out there who are fundamentally good people who get caught up in these things, and they're not prepared for the level of, frankly, cruel and criminal behavior that people within these classified projects are willing to do.
Absolutely. The setup that Doty did was, for lack of a better word, brilliant.
Right.
If you're going to act and prove that you are in the capacity that you are, and I'm speaking of Doty himself, and take somebody onto an Air Force base and into a colonel's office and sit him down, that's all the official. You're not being BS'd at that point. You have to accept what is going down to be real. And I feel so bad for Paul Benowitz. I really do. And the whole tragic part of the entire story, Dr. Greer, is it's true. That's the part that is mind-blowing. And so let's...
That's what, people who are listening need to understand. All of this is true. There have been covert programs dealing with the ET issue for the better part of the last 70 years, and we have had technological developments, and moreover, there has been this lost opportunity for us to enter into a period in our history where we become an interplanetary civilization, where we really make this huge leap forward in terms of who we are as a people. And all of that has gotten held up and tragically destroyed its potential, or almost destroyed, by folks who are desperate to maintain control and power. And I think that's why when I hear people talking about, trillions being spent on trying to abate carbon with, the greenhouse gas effect and global warming and this and that, I said, you know what, let's take a fraction of it and do some research and development in this area of new physics, because there's your solution. But only partially. The bigger part of the solution is that the people are going to have to know about it and be behind it so it doesn't disappear again. Because for 100 years there have been breakthroughs in technology like this. But one of the biggest things that has to happen, and this is what's really exciting since I spoke to you last, we've released a free app that you can go to our website and see it, where anyone who wants to be part of a contact team and go out into the stars together can download this app on their smartphone. It's really just a website, but it shows who else is around you in your region. And within hours of announcing that, the entire globe, every continent lit up with little CSETI triangles, we call them. Our logo is a little triangle. And so people can connect with each other, anywhere. I think every state but South Dakota now has people who are part of these contact teams, and every continent and virtually every country. So it's really exciting, and that's one thing people can do. And I tell people, why is that important? Well, that's the contact corollary to what we're doing with disclosure, and that is the people need to do it, because it's unlikely the president is. In the corollary here, it's unlikely that the State Department or the Foreign Service of some other country or the United Nations are going to set up the protocols to make contact with these civilizations. But if people do it as a citizens initiative, it might have a huge effect, more than people can imagine. And since we launched this, and there's a second app, by the way, that's not free, but it's a whole training course in remote viewing and using the contact protocols. But both these apps, you can connect to them through our website. What's interesting is that there are now thousands and thousands of teams all over the world doing this, and we get these amazing reports of people having these experiences where first time they go out with a couple people to do this, and they have a craft that suddenly materializes and dematerializes and does all kinds of phenomena, and they have contact experiences. And people say, how can that be? I say, it's because these civilizations are waiting someone who's not a doofus to step forward to welcome them here. I mean, let's think about it. I mean, the face that we have shown to these civilizations has either been denial, disinformation, or militarism. So, this is where it begins to be everyone's responsibility to say, well, gee, what if we try this ourselves? We're going to do a big experiment with this, by the way. I just want to get this in real fast. Near Joshua Tree National Park, there's a little town called Joshua Tree. And we're going to do a night that's open to the public on August 10th as part of the Contact in the Desert conference. And people who want to come to that, we're going to be out under the stars together doing all of these techniques and protocols for an evening. So anyone who wants to come who can get there, that's on August 10th up in Joshua Tree at the Contact in the Desert. And there's a link on the front page of our website for people who want to register for that. It's SeriousDisclosure.com. So, I tell people, one of the reasons I'm so keen on that is that the effect that consciousness has when a lot of people begin to do something is the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. There is this 100th monkey effect. And I think just like disclosure needs to happen that way, with more and more people coming forward, the contact initiatives need to happen that way. And people should not be sitting on their hands waiting for any government of the world to do it. Because, first of all, I hate to say it, but given the clowns that are in most governments, it's heaven forbid. But, I think we can do better. I think the people can do better. And that's why I think it's really exciting when people take that initiative on themselves.
We're going to be broadcasting, by the way, Friday night from Joshua Tree, and I can't.
Really? Oh, you should join me up on the stage Sunday night.
Oh, are you kidding me? I'm going to be right there, man.
If you want to, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we're going to be doing. I don't know what day that you're going to be arriving there, but we're going to broadcast Friday night. Our normal. We broadcast all week, but the Friday night broadcast will be done from Joshua Tree. So anybody. If you're going to be there, just stop by, and we'll figure out that later. But
I actually am not arriving till Sunday. I'm doing a lecture for the conference that Sunday afternoon.
Oh, I got you.
It's a big keynote talk that's at about 4:00. But then this nighttime event is sort of a post-conference event that people can register for. But it's going to be really exciting because last year when we did it, I guess we had about 500 people.
Yeah, I heard it was extraordinary, and I can't wait. I'm going to be right there with you, man. I'm going to be so there.
Yeah, we have a great laser show, and we do the whole remote view training, and I mean, as much as you can do in an evening. But it's really fun, and it's great to have that many people kind of on the same page. Out under the stars together doing something beautiful. It's really exciting.
It's got to be extraordinary. Okay, I can't hold it back. I can't hold the listeners back any further. We've got
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's just great. Okay, so let's you received the document today. You spoke with me on the phone right after you got the document. And I asked you politely today, do not tell me, don't read it. I don't want to know. I want to hear it for the first time with everybody else tonight on the show. So have at it. Let's just start from the top, and the stage is yours.
Yeah, well, okay, well, it begins with the Air Force Office of Special Investigations stamp, official stamp, which we've had confirmed is legitimate, November 17th, 1990. So this is more recent. And it's stamped secret. And there are some things X'd out at the very, very top. And then there's a series of code numbers and that I'm not going to go through because it won't mean anything to anyone because it doesn't mean anything to me. And then it says ZNY secret for AFOSI only. That's Air Force Office of Special Investigations. And then it says FMHQ, headquarters, AFOSI, Bowling Air Force Base, D.C., 1 VOE. 2, so it's from Bowling Air Force Base, AFOSI headquarters, to AFOSI District 17, Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico. And it's also got information, some codes for Fort Belvoir, Virginia, which is another classified facility.
Mm-hmm.
It says request for photo imagery interpretation, your message, which has a series of numbers and names, subject case, and a whole bunch of information. And it says, number 1, the subject negatives film were analyzed by headquarters IVT and 7602. These are compartmented operations. And the following results were found. A, subject negative number 1, depicting a C-5A aircraft on approach and streaking unidentified aerial object in the lower right portion of the film. The film found to be unaltered. Side differential was not consistent with size of aircraft. Conclusion, inconclusive. And then B, negative number 2, depicting a cylinder-shaped unidentified aerial object in upper left portion of the photo. The film found to be unaltered. The film showed object to be consistent with field depth and consistent with relative size of fixed objects. Conclusion, legitimate negative of an unidentified aerial object. And then underneath, this had a line through it because I think they were planning to blacken it out at some point. It says Bolton-Reinfeld method did not reveal visible markings on the object. So there's some kind of technique they used.
Right,
And
black.
then C, negative number 3, depicting irregular-shaped unidentified aerial object in 7 frames of 8mm film. Because of the size and apparent speed of the object, no further classification or conclusion could be drawn. The film shown to be unaltered. D, 34 inches of 8mm film depicting apparent colored object moving in front of a still camera. The film found to be unaltered. Spectroscopy revealed colors to basic prism features. Depth analysis revealed object to be within 152 millimeter mm. I don't know if that's millimeters of the cameras. I'm just reading what it says.
Right.
Object was not consistent with relative size of fixed objects observed for several seconds in the film. E, original negative depicting unidentified object found to be unaltered. Because of a lack of fixed objects in the film, no depth analysis could be performed. And then this is all marked through again, but it's legible. It says Bolton-Reinfeld method revealed object to be saucer-shaped. It was approximately 37 feet in diameter, and the object contained a trilateral insignia on the lower portion of the object.
Really?
Conclusion, yes.
Oh.
Conclusion, legitimate negative of unidentified aerial object. And then number 2, reference your request for further information regarding headquarters CR44. I don't know what that is. The following is provided. Captain Grace, 7602, Intelligence, contacted and related the following. U.S. Air Force no longer publicly is active in UFO air research. However, U.S. Air Force still has interest in all UFO sightings over U.S. Air Force installations and test ranges. several other government agencies led by NASA actively investigates legitimate sightings through covert cover. Then this is marked through, and this is pretty disturbing. One such cover is the UFO Reporting Center, U.S. Coast and Geodetic Survey, Rockville, Maryland. NASA filters results of sightings to appropriate military departments with interest in that particular sighting. The official U.S. government policy and results of Project Aquarius is still classified top secret with no dissemination outside official intelligence channels and with restricted access to MJ-12. And then it says, case of Benowitz is being monitored by NASA/INS.
INF?
Request INS,
Okay.
as in Sam.
Okay.
I think that's an investigative service, who request all future evidence to be forwarded to them through AFOSI IVOE. 4. Reference your request for technical assistance because of the chance of public disclosure. No knowledgeable personnel with SPA, I'm not sure what that means, will be provided. Continue to receive assistance from individuals mentioned in your message. Miller Fulgate, Fugate. Because of the sensitivity of the case, we request that they be thoroughly debriefed at regular intervals. And then it says downgrade 17 November 2020, secret. So apparently this was not supposed to be at all out anywhere until the year 2020. But anyway, we have it now.
Okay, I have a variety of questions that let's discuss a few things together. And I know that you've been reading this document all day, so maybe we can extrapolate some things out of it. First off, they are referencing a bunch of 8mm movie footage. And the one thing that I find curious, well, also going back to the C5A
Well, no,
galaxy.
it's both negatives and 8mm. It's different things. Some are 8mm, some are just negatives of film.
Right. We'll get to that. But the first two references that they made to, one was 7 frames of 8mm footage. And I wonder what exactly, I mean, it was, was it civilians that took the footage and they acquired the footage, or was this military footage to begin with? And the other one was...
Your guess is as good as mine. I suspect it's probably both. I think it's probably film that has been acquired from these ranges and also that have been acquired through these, what I call a cutout. When they say one such cover is the UFO Reporting Center.
Right, that's interesting. That is so interesting.
Yeah, and so what you find is that I know some years ago, I'm not going to mention any names because I just don't like all the stuff, the gossip that goes on, but there was someone with connections to the Navy in the D.C. area who was a UFO researcher, and I had some film footage that was given to me, and he needed to see the original, which was provided. When it came back, exactly the frames that had the UFO footage in it was snipped out. So, yeah, that was in the early days when I trusted people.
Right.
So, I just say that as a cautionary tale. Now, of course, I had a copy of it, but the original was needed for the analysis, and when it came back, that was snipped out.
Let's go back to the...
And it was a luminous, domed, disc-shaped object that was landing in California, taking on old film footage from someone who was camping. And it was actually an MJ-12 friendly who was letting us use a digital lab to put together the images for the briefings for Congress in 1997, who got this film to me. And it was the original. It was not a copy. We had the original film, and that's what happened. Those frames were snipped out.
Did they at least edit it back together for you? Or did it just come back snipped?
No. Luckily, I had a copy, but it's not the same as the original. So, you learn to be very careful.
Now, back to the document. Did they reference MJ-12 at the end? Was it Magic, Majestic, or MJ-12?
MJ-12 with the 12 spelled out.
Oh, MJ-12 spelled out. I'm taking notes here. Okay, so...
Yeah. And what was also interesting was the results of Project Aquarius is still classified top secret, with no dissemination outside official intelligence. So now, there's another mention of this Project Aquarius from this document, from a very good source, and which, I'm almost certain this is not a hoax document. So that then redounds on the side of the ledger for these other documents on Project Aquarius, which are at our website. At least that executive summary was a legitimate executive summary, even if all the information in it may not have been up to date.
What was the, you were just reading it. Let's go back to the Paul Benowitz comment that the Paul Benowitz case was still being looked at. What was that line?
Yeah, I thought that was really rather interesting.
Yeah.
Because this was quite a bit later. And it just says, it's in the last paragraph of this document, and it says, case of Benowitz is being monitored by NASA/INS, IN as in never, S as in Sam, who request all future evidence to be forwarded to them through AFOSI IVOE. I do not know what IVOE stands for.
Yeah, I've got all of this. Totally. Why?
And this is a 1990 document.
Right, right.
So there was apparently still concern of things going on with this Benowitz case. And I have it on very good source that everything that happened around that was because some objects were seen that were highly classified but man-made, and they did not want it to be known we had these. And some years ago there was a Pentagon spokesman who let it slip that the next generation of aircraft that we would have would be anti-gravity, and that was actually on CNN. I think that this is, I always tell people that, who say, well, maybe everything that's seen is man-made. I say, well, that I seriously doubt, because these objects have been seen for thousands of years. But, and we know that some of them are ET. But the only thing more explosive than the fact that we're not alone in the universe, which the majority of the public accepts, is that there are classified projects that have these kinds of technologies that they're sitting on, while we sit and burn the earth and melt those polar ice caps and have 48% of the world's population in dire poverty.
Right.
This is insane. So, can you imagine a civilization from another star system observing that this level of galactic dysfunction that's going on this planet is breathtaking?
Well, the dysfunction comes from only like 100 years of maturity. In other words, we're still dumb children here in the big scope of things. Well,
yes and no. I mean, you think about it, and it has to do with when, good people let really rotten apples take over. And I think that all of this is avoidable. I think that, it gets into an existential conversation.
Sure it does.
Of really, why are we in this situation, and what is it going to take? And ultimately, it's going to, yes, there has to be the information, there has to be knowledge, there has to be education. But the indispensable ingredient is courage. And, there are so many people I've dealt with who have enormous information that I would love to have them if they don't have the courage to do it. And I think part of it is, how much you're trying to cling to the status quo of your existence. I mean, maybe this gets a little personal, but, when I was 17, I had a near-death experience, and it sort of cured me of the fear of death, although it was unpleasant. But then I didn't have to be afraid of that anymore. But I think that people fear so many things, and it's the fear that keeps them from doing the right thing. And ultimately, I really applaud people like the gentleman who's helping me get these sort of documents, and who still, he still has, in effect, a secret clearance till 2016. And I think that what I see is a lot of people who need to find the courage to do the right thing.
With I wanted to ask you this earlier, and for me, it's always been a little bit confusing. First off, we're dealing with a mix of fake and real documents going back to the very beginning of William Moore and Jamie Shandera and Stanton and everything else. But you have Magic. I mentioned this earlier, and you kind of laughed, but it's true. We have Magic, we have Majestic, we have MJ12, we have 12, 12, 12, 12 spelled out, 12 in Roman numerals. Are we? Can you define? Is there a difference between all of these, or is it a mix of real and fictitious? And which?
Well, I think there's some that are compartments. The one document another document I have from the National Reconnaissance Office, which is the super secret spy entity that was originally run by the Air Force. It puts up all the birds, the satellites up there that are the spy birds. The document that from Nellis Air Force Base, the so-called Area 51, that I received, is almost certainly legitimate. Now, it's also a secret document, has not been declassified, and it refers to Magic, M-A-J-I-C, and Majestic, but it also refers to a number of other compartments, as I mentioned, Blackjack, and a few others. So, that document was basically a security breach warning because of the fact that there were people trying to get into the perimeter of Nellis Air Force Base back in 1990. But it has a whole list, the distribution list on this document. It mentions Magic and Majestic. Now, I think it's because there are different compartments that are called Magic versus Majestic versus Blackjack versus what have you, that deal with different aspects of this. And as you know, these things are highly, highly compartmentalized into numerous compartments and smaller and smaller and smaller compartments. So I think that's part of what you're looking at. And you're also looking at documents over 50 or 60 years from the 40s all the way up until, this is the 1990s.
When I see Magic, either it could be spelled out with a G, a J, or MJ, and then Majestic, 12 reference. Sometimes 12 is not reference. Sometimes it's Roman numerals. Sometimes it's 12. And you just don't, your head starts to spin a little bit. You don't know what to believe, is this 12 individuals are they talking about? Is it some kind of compartmentalization where it's for your eyes only? Magic could represent 150 people. Whoever
Sure.
is
well,
entitled to.
There is a sort of a senior committee that I've been told is 200 or 300 folks.
Yeah. Okay.
And then within that, there's sort of an executive committee within that. I have met with some of these folks over the years, and my impression of it is that it's not a monolithic. It's highly dysfunctional also. And some years ago, I know there's been an evolution. When I met with the CIA director in the 90s, I was told that there were about a third, at the best, of people in Magic who supported this idea of ending the secrecy and disclosure. A few years ago, I was told that that number is now around two-thirds of Magic thinks that the time has come to do that. The problem with the other 30% is that they're the ones who, eat their own, like they did to Bill Colby, CIA Director Colby, who was trying to defect essentially from the party line of secrecy. So I think that's where we have to understand that these are human beings, and it's not a monolith. And there are all these kind of caricatures and fantasies that people have, but when push comes to shove, there are people in there with varying and competing agendas. For example, there are people in this group that are maintaining the secrecy because of the macroeconomic issues. There are others that are concerned about the weaponization of these technologies, which is a legitimate concern. There's others that are concerned about the control and the power of organized religion being, if you will, altered by the recognition that we're not alone in the universe, and the origins of modern Homo sapiens may not be exactly what the creation myths that people have been taught are. In fact, I was told by a scientist from the Jet Propulsion Labs years ago, when some of the images were coming back from Mars of structures and objects and obelisks. And even, as you know, Buzz Aldrin, the second man to walk on the moon, said we need to go back there and look at these obelisks, who told me point blank that the reason that they would never release those images is that it would collapse the orthodox belief systems of every fundamentalist religious entity in the world. And to which I said, well, fine. I mean, they can evolve and grow up like everyone else. And he says, no, you don't understand the amount of power that's represented in those belief systems. So, and this was a scientist telling me this. So I think that, you know, there's not unanimity about the secrecy or even how to go forward. And I think that creates, it's dangerous on one level. On another level, it creates an opportunity for us, because it means that people can come forward and the friendly people can begin to step into that breach more boldly than they could have, say, 15 years ago.
I've got, you want to take a couple of quick calls before we wrap things up?
Sure, yeah, there's someone there.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. First call, Lynn, where are you calling from?
Oh, I'm in Australia.
You're in Australia. Oh, Lynn, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Okay, we're good. We're live, so let's go quick.
You may have to repeat his question because I can barely hear him.
Okay, Lynn, what's your question?
I was just wondering about, has Dr. Greer actually ever met an extraterrestrial?
Ask the question one more time. Has Dr. Greer
ever met an extraterrestrial?
Great question, Lynn. Thank you. And call in again, and we'll talk via email. Thank you, Lynn.
Okay.
She wants to know if you have ever actually met an E.T.
Yes, I have, and that's how I got involved with all this. And,
Well,
of course, that account is in the book Hidden Truth, Forbidden Knowledge, that roughly was the basis for the film Sirius. And by the way, people who haven't seen the film, you can still see it through our website at SiriusDisclosure.com. But back many, many years ago, I had a sighting when I was young, when I was 8 or 9, daytime, it was very clear. And then when I was 18, I was up in the mountains of North Carolina and up on about 5,000 or 6,000 feet up, and had another sighting right before sunset, and then stayed up there and was doing sort of a meditation, a deep sort of meditation. And afterwards, I had an amazing experience, and I stood up, and there was a small, maybe 5 foot, well, I'm 6'4", ET that was on my right side that touched me on my right shoulder. And interestingly, as an 18-year-old guy, at first I thought it was an upright deer on its leg, because it had deer-like, kind of beautiful deer-like eyes. And I thought, what is this deer doing here? And but it was very surreal. And eventually what happened is that I had an experience where I just, if you can visualize this, sort of vanished instantly and had this experience with this ET, and the craft was sort of in a other dimension, if you want to look at it that way, a trans-dimensional experience. But it was very detailed. And actually it was during that experience in the fall of 1973 that I created the CE5, Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative. And it was based on this contact experience I had when I was 18 up in the mountains of North Carolina.
Another quick call that we've got them stacked up here a little bit. Okay, you're live with Dr. Greer. Who's calling?
This is Jose. I'm in Utah.
Hi, Jose. How are you?
I'm doing really good. I have a quick question for Dr. Greer.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Hey, Dr. Greer, what do you think about the people doing the quantum energy generator thing? Like, it seems like they're making progress, and I don't know, like, is it Majestic, like, going to do something? Like, what do you think of them?
Thank you, Jose.
Well, I think it's a very good question. I've certainly been following that with tremendous interest. And as you all know, we have now announced a $100,000 challenge and award to anyone who can actually build such a device and bring it here so that we can test it and have it reproduced. And to date, nobody has taken us up on that. Now, I'm not saying that it doesn't work. I just don't know. I have never seen one personally. And, of course, videos on the Internet are not dispositive. So what you really need is a physical operating device that can be tested independently and then reproduced faithfully to prove the science of it. And that's why we announced a couple months ago this $100,000 challenge and award, energy award. And I'm hoping that it is, and that someone here in the United States, I know apparently someone made one in Morocco and one that made one in, I think, Taiwan or somewhere in Asia. But I hope that somebody will be able to make one and have it operational and bring it here to where we are near the University of Virginia so that we can evaluate it and prove it. So I probably know as much as you do and not a lot more. I've heard the stories and I've seen the videos. However, we do not have a lab to fabricate one, and I'm certainly, not someone, I'm an emergency doctor, not an electrical engineer, but if somebody can create one, it's an open source technology, and if it does in fact work, we're asking that they close the loop on it. Now, what do I mean by that? It means that the output from the device needs to run the input, and it should also carry a load, or run a load of at least a kilowatt of power. And if it's self-running and can carry a load like that, believe me, we'll put everything we have behind it and move it forward very, very quickly. But so far, nobody has offered. Someone who knew the people behind the quantum energy generator contacted them, and they weren't interested in the award. But then the next thing I got was a request for funding. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I'm very scientific in my approach to these things. If it works, it'd be the best news I've ever heard. But we're still waiting for someone to be able to fabricate one and bring it for evaluation.
Are you prepared? This is from me to you with love. But are you prepared to handle what happened with Jamie Shandera and William Moore, and the possibility of these documents, being disinformation, and you're going to be the guy that's driving that vehicle, and what could possibly result from that? Are you prepared? Are you ready to go? Are the gloves on?
Well, sure. If they are disinformation, then what I say to people is that I haven't said that we have any information about whether they are or not authentic. We're waiting to get more corroboration. Today we got something in the mail that mentions Project Aquarius. That document certainly looks legitimate, and the provenance of that document is even stronger than the original Aquarius documents. So the question becomes, you start adding this up, but I don't have any of my personally, I'm not attached to them being real or not real. I just want to know the truth. And the reason I put them out there was to try to stimulate people who have firsthand knowledge of that project and of the documents. And we've been getting a small but steady amount of information and data. But at this point, it's still indeterminate, and that's what I said when I put them out there. So Now, a lot of people want to do, and I told you so in an armchair. I say, yeah, well, if you're a document authenticator who worked at the right hand of General Odom or someone like that at the NSA, I'll listen to your opinion. But if it's just John Q, whoever, who's opining, everyone becomes, and I'm not a document expert, although I know this subject very, very well, but I'm relying on putting it out there so that people who might be able to confirm or deny them can come forward. So far, we've been getting people who have knowledge of a so-called Project Aquarius and other documents like the one we received today that mention it by name. And the question becomes, well, is this something that is a legitimate new source of information or not? And I honestly at this point don't know, but this is how we find out. We put it out there and we ask. And I don't have to feel like I have to get into an argument with anyone over, because what I'm going to say to people is that we're just trying to collect the information and the data.
Right. Well, I'm referring to something even more direct than that. The document, yeah, absolutely could be real, coming from the Office of AFOSI for the purposes of disinformation. And the example of Benowitz and his name being in that document itself, it just, it seems to, the possibility is there. It could be.
Sure, absolutely. And that's, and yet at the same time, the description, of the analysis of the film footage, the information that is there that mentions this Project Aquarius, it can be a real document that has disinformation in it. So absolutely that's the case, and that's why ultimately you want people to come forward that can corroborate other aspects of it, who have personal knowledge. And that's really what we did. We started getting people to come forward about the Bent Waters and Rendlesham Forest event that happened where this craft landed back in 1980 in England, or the event that happened, years ago. We knew that there was this Japan Airlines cargo jet that had this massive UFO that it had on radar, and then we eventually got the guy who was head of the accidents and investigations for the FAA, John Callahan, heard us making a call for witnesses, and he came forward with the original digital radar tapes, which I have. So this is what you do. And
right.
So, this is what research and investigation is. And it wouldn't surprise me if any of the outcomes that you mentioned were to occur.
Right. I want you to write this down and look into this yourself. I just got an email that says, go check out Greg Bishop's 2005 book, Chapter 16, pages 118 to 132. So there you go. So go and check that out. It looks like there's a connection there. One that we don't have.
Well, look, people can send us an information at our website at SiriusDisclosure.com, SIRIUS, excuse me, SIRIUSDisclosure.com. And, anyone with information about any of these documents, we welcome input if they have firsthand knowledge. I mean, as far as, armchair speculation, I really don't have time to get into that.
Right.
But if people have firsthand knowledge, either pro or con, that we are looking for. And by the way, I think if you're going to be honest about investigating, that's what you do. And so this document that came today is just one more interesting, although kind of explosive, some of what it mentions, especially about how they're using different entities as a cover for collecting information about UFOs. And this was written in 1990. Many years after Project Blue Book closed. So, if this document is legitimate, it kind of flies in the face of a lot of public statements the Air Force has made since 1990.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, this is an area that all of us, you, myself, and anybody else, we need to, roll down this road together. I mean, it's very important that we do this and find out. There's so much information out there, Dr. Greer, and you and I, we can't do it all on our own. And
oh, no. I mean, it's a huge undertaking, and my feeling about it is that the more people who have firsthand knowledge of an event or the technology or a document, the better, and they're out there. I mean, look, there have been tens of thousands of people employed in covert programs and in the aerospace industry that know about this stuff. And we need to encourage more and more of them to come forward with whatever it is that they know.
I can't wait for August 8th. And I think everybody needs to understand about Contact in the Desert, how extraordinary of an event that it really is. And we have been, we've had our contest for the last few weeks giving away passes. But it is such an extraordinary weekend. And it's just like, who's who of who's who, all at one place at one time. And it's and you're going to be there, and I can't wait. It's too bad you're not going to be there when we're going to be broadcasting. We'll have you call in.
I have my kids and grandkids and I have a standing beach week obligation that goes until that Sunday. So I'm literally flying out and coming out that Sunday, the 10th, to give my presentation, and I'm going to provide an update on all of this material, and then we're going to do the really exciting Contact event at night. And again, people who want to join us, you can find out at SeriousDisclosure.com. There's a link there on the front page for the August 10th nighttime expedition under the stars, and I hope to see a lot of folks there. It was a lot of fun last year, and Jimmy, I hope you can join us on I know Colin Andrews, a very, very dear friend of mine. He's going to be with us up on the stage, and some other folks, and I think it's going to be a fun and exciting night of meditation and discussion and contact out under the stars there in Joshua Tree.
I'm going to bang out yes, and I will participate, and I'll be there. We're going to do it hardcore, man. I think we're going to pop tents. We're gonna camp out there with everybody else. It's gonna be fun. Anyway, I want to before I let you get away, a couple of quick questions I want to get into you. When I attended your Rio Rico conference a few years ago, you spoke about the New Mexico spaceport as being the place where ETs would finally land openly. Do you still believe that will happen?
Well, I was referring to the fact that we had an experience that showed us an event in the future near White Sands where there would be a public event, and that could still happen. What I think is that there are multiple possible futures, and a lot of it depends on what we do in the now. And so there's a good possibility that if enough people understand the power of the mind and the power of people coming together to do something meaningful and in the right spirit, that enormous change can happen very quickly. And that's the magic, the beautiful part of the magic that happens when people come together. And the understanding of consciousness, of how mind is actually not limited in space or time. And that's been proven scientifically, by the way. That once you understand that and understand how to get to that space, as it were, within yourself, the possibility of what can be manifested when a lot of people get there and intend something to occur is really how we create this future. And I think that one of the things that we've seen in that future is an open event that would be actually supported and protected by officials and the government, where there will be an open contact event. And that when that would happen depends on what we all do now. But I think the potential for that is definitely there. And I remember I had a very, I'm part Cherokee Indian. My dad was half Cherokee. And a lot of the way that I have intuitions is that I have lucid dreams of the future. I actually met my wife that way in a lucid dream. So I think that people have to understand that there are possible futures, and some may be probable futures. And so much of them coming into the now is about what we all do collectively and individually. And that's why I think the whole concept of the Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind initiative, where people come together, sit together in a circle out under the stars, as ancient people always have, and make contact and invite contact, is how, when you start having thousands and then perhaps millions of people do that, it can have an effect that can alter the course of human history in a very good way.
Since Dr. Greer grew up a few miles from the Brown Mountain Lights area, did he ever see them, and does he believe that there's an ET connection? That's from Ben.
I never saw them. And I don't know if those are piezoelectric or some other natural phenomenon or what those are. I certainly have heard the accounts. And now, just north of there is where I had this amazing contact event when I was 18. And I was up on this mountain outside of Boone, North Carolina. And it was in that same area of the southern Appalachian Mountains. And I can tell you that many people that we've spoken to, even old-timers, report seeing ET craft going in and out of those mountains over many, many years, just like you get these reports from the Mount Shasta area of California.
Right.
And at Joshua Tree, some of the most important CE5 events, if you look at our the last book that we had come out about the contact experiences our teams have had, some of the most amazing ones have happened up in Joshua Tree. So there seems to be certain areas where a lot of sightings and contact has happened, but I don't think it's limited to geography. I think it's more limited. It may be assisted by geography, but I think the bigger factor is consciousness, the mind. And if people understand what is the potential within the human awareness to see remote places and remote times and make contact, and remember that all these civilizations that are interstellar, they're not limited to using, an iPhone or something at the speed of light. They're using technologies that interface directly with thought. And so if you begin to contemplate what does it mean to be transdimensional and interstellar, and you realize that 90% of the action is inside, not outside. And once that dawns on you and you begin to practice it, it's really very simple, but it opens up an entirely new cosmos.
I've gotten so much email in the last half hour, and I have to follow up on this. It's because of Twitter, and if I let you get away, some angry people are going to be out there. I have to ask about MH370. And it's such an open question because it's such a big mystery, so it doesn't really matter what the question is. What are your thoughts on MH370?
I have no information on that. Personally, I have not had anyone credible reach out to me from the intelligence community. I have my own speculative ideas about it, but that's all it would be.
Which is fine. That's all of us have, to be honest, Dr. Greer.
Well, I'm not going to say that this is what happened, but if you remember a couple of years ago, we had a top-secret drone that was taken over electronically through electronic warfare over the airspace of Iran, and they were able to take it, hijack it, and land it.
Right.
So the question that has come up in my mind is that there are so many incongruencies with this Malaysian aircraft, this 777, which is a fly-by-wire. It's mostly electronic. That would it have been possible for someone on board or elsewhere to get in through either a satellite system or the electronic system and do something very disturbing to those controls? The more we have our lives dependent on these wireless electronic systems, the more vulnerable we all are to this kind of a cyber attack. And I think that is something that struck me immediately. Now, I have no foundation to say that anything like that actually happened, but I'm just raising it as that it could explain a lot of the data. And I'm surprised no one's actually spoken very much about that, because it is well proven that even though this drone over Iran was top secret, it was run from a top secret base and a top secret satellite, and even its design and its shape was classified, people were able to hack into it and not just make it crash, but actually take control of it, seize control of it, and land it safely and study it. So the question becomes, if that capability exists to do that to something as top secret as the state-of-the-art drone investigating Iranian nuclear research, how much easier would it be to do that to a civilian airplane?
Not much.
Okay, so I'm just bringing that up. I'm not saying at all that's what happened. I'm just raising the question. I think it's an avenue of investigation that should not be precluded.
Well, let's not forget when the Iranians had first said, "Okay, we have it." What did we say? No, you don't.
Yeah, of course.
That was the first thing, and Washington was very public and very adamant and very strong. And until a couple of days later, when the Iranians started showing us serial numbers of parts. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, and that's what it took. Made in the USA, and now of course they have their own duplicates of it, and they've been showing that for the last couple of weeks too. But it was the denial from us that it was impossible for that to happen. And the scary part about it is, and you're making it very clear, which is how safe are we, when we jump on a 777 or anything else for that matter.
Well, and the Airbuses are even more dependent on fly-by-wire. So what I bring this up for is that they probably need to harden security on these, navigation and essential controls that are on these aircraft. But I just think it's been a conspicuous lack of discussion in the mainstream media about that as an avenue to explore, and I don't, have any information to indicate that is what happened, but I just think it's something that needs to be looked at because it's certainly the way this aircraft turned and maneuvered and the data points and the way it disappeared just seemed to vanish. It doesn't make any sense at all. Now, it may be laying at the bottom of the ocean down there, and it'll be found in 5 years. But even then, the question is, how did it end up there, and what really happened? So, and I think, however, if this is something that they're concerned about, I think they would not talk about it because they don't want people to panic and not be flying. If that capability does exist out there somewhere by some hackers to take over a commercial airliner, this is certainly not something that they would want to advertise.
No, that would ground. Well, it would unintentionally ground every aircraft because nobody would ever buy another plane ticket.
A lot of this is the confidence. It's just like the financial system. It all runs on people being confident, and there's a certain article of faith every time you step on. Every time you get in your car, and every time you step on an aircraft. So I think this is not something they'd want talked about. But I'm just a little suspicious that it's a conventional aircraft accident. There's something not copacetic about it. But honestly, I do not have any. I'm purely, kind of spitballing these comments, and I have no inside information to say that this is what happened.
Well, and again, your opinion is just as valid as anybody else's, and that's it, because we don't know anything. And there's one point that I think that really needs to be driven home with this, which is after 9/11, we were assured that every single commercial flight on planet Earth was taken care of and tracked, period. And that's why we got back on airplanes. And, you just said it yourself. It's confidence that drives it. Well, that was the confidence that we were promised. And that's it.
Right, and the reality is very different than that. It's really, it's a Hail Mary pass. And, I think, frankly, I'm not saying that the system is completely unsafe, but let's face it, we're flying around on something that's a flying bomb with thousands of gallons of exploding jet fuel potentially. With the technology, the engines themselves, the jet engines that were invented in the 1930s. So, we're not dealing with, and that's one of the other sad things is that we have a whole lot of technologies that are being kept out of the public domain. And you look at the things that were, as an emergency doctor, how many accidents I've taken care of off the freeway from vehicles exploding and collisions and all this flammable, explosive stuff. When we have needed that type of energy and propulsion system since before I was born, and I'm no spring chicken. So, the question is, every time I see something like that, I think, God, what a shame that we're still using these early 20th century technologies when we've had something better and safer, non-explosive that we could be using that's been around for 60 years.
And again, I want to thank you. Thank you for hanging on for an extra 15 minutes. And
well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you in Joshua Tree.
Always good having you on. And we will see you in Joshua Tree. And give my best to Emily, and we will speak soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Greer. Have a good night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Wow. Okay. You know what? I'm going to open up the phone lines right now. I can take a couple of quick phone calls. Right now, phone lines are open, 323-825-5045, and we will be taking your calls. If somebody, we blew out everything. I'm going to take a quick break. This is Fade to Black on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Woo! I'm going to go through email, Twitter, talk about tomorrow, the rest of the week, and what's going on next week. Stay with us, everybody. Fade to Black. I'll be right back after this.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
Dark Matter.
Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter. Dark Matter.
You're listening to Fade to Black
on the Dark Matter Radio Network.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carsanel Tiburón y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black, the Wednesday edition. Oh, what a great conversation with Dr. Greer. It's kind of funny. I was watching, I was watching Twitter as we were going through. Audio was cool. Sounded great. I was watching everything, the duct tape. And to that end, there was one of the comments. Let me go back here in Twitter. Oh, here it is. It was from Lou. Lou goes, "Who all is flying to contact in the desert?" And, look, that thought crossed my mind. And I almost made an offhanded comment about that we have to drive, we're just driving. But, when you get on a plane these days after MH370, does the thought cross your mind? And it must. Lou, you're absolutely right. It must cross your mind now, because after 9/11, the one assurance that we had was that everything was going to be checked and monitored, and we knew, and with all these extraordinary measures of, taking off your shoes. You remember the underwear bomber guy in Detroit who tried to light his underwear on? You remember that? That things like that were not going to happen, and the doors and locks on the cockpit doors, and the guys that flying the planes were the guys that were supposed to be in there, and it was locked and gunproof and bulletproof. We knew all of that stuff, and then all of a sudden this happens with MH370. Quite possibly somebody took over the plane remotely. And I think that's insane. That was the assurance that we were given, that couldn't happen. And that everything was accounted for, every flight out there. I think it's a point that needs to be driven home. Absolutely. Okay. Anyway, Leslie, I saw this tweet that you that sent. I couldn't read it on the air, but I thought it was awesome, which was this comes from Leslie Johnson. That's how the government works. They treat us like mushrooms by keeping us in the dark and feeding us crap. He used another word. But well put. Well put. Okay, there's so many tweets that are coming in. I don't even know if we have enough time. We've got some email, too. Thank you, Dr. Greer, Mr. Church, for another enlightening show. And thanks to all of you on Twitter, too. You know, I have no idea. I don't think I've saved them all. But, wow, just literally hundreds and hundreds of tweets tonight. Extraordinary. Thank you, everybody, for it. Email. I want to get to some of that, too. Now, tomorrow night, Alejandro Rojas. And that's a big deal. That's a real big deal. Tomorrow night, Open Minds TV, the man himself will be here with us. And, you know, the full-on studio-to-studio connection. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And then Friday night, we are bringing on, and I want to stress this, we're bringing Edward Reardon back on before Joe Buckman. And I want to know exactly how, what, where, when his reading was done, how he does it, what he sees, and everything else. We had him on last week right before Courtney, and that was a surprise call. I could only talk to him for about 5 minutes before we brought on Courtney Brown. And so we were talking this week, and so Friday is available. So definitely that is going to be really cool. And I want to know this whole – I've always believed in remote viewing and Ingo and Stargate and everything that they have been doing with that type of research for many years. There's something to it, and I think it is as valid as anything else. So that's what's going on Friday, and that is going to be extraordinary. Joe Buckman, I meant to mention that tonight with Dr. Greer. Joe Buckman was the original spokesman for the 2001 Citizens Hearing on disclosure, and amongst other things. But his connection to Dr. Greer, I don't even know if Dr. Greer is aware that he is coming on Friday night, but that's what's going on. Okay, now also this reference to Greg Bishop's 2005 book Project Beta. I don't pretend to know everything out there, and that is what you are there for. And this came in from Ryan Robert, that the documents that Dr. Greer were reading tonight were from Greg Bishop's 2005 book, Project Beta, Chapter 16. So I'm going to look into that. I don't know everything, but what I'm certainly not here to do without me doing research ahead of time or knowing anything, I'm not here to, attempt to bust somebody's chops or anything else and try to catch them off guard. That's not my intention. That's not what the show is about. But certainly, I'll make him aware of this tonight before he posts anything tomorrow, and let him do his own investigation and find out. All right, but Ryan, I will say this: I do appreciate you sending that in. This is a live radio show. And so, yeah, I will read this, and I'll make myself aware of it. Of course, that's what we're here for. Nobody's hiding, and nobody's into disinformation, but I'm certainly not here to embarrass anybody. That's not what we're here for. But we will pass this on to him, Dr. Greer, after the show tonight, and then let him do with it as he wishes. All right, and I will look into it tonight too as well. I do appreciate it, Ryan. All right. And you heard me the way that I dealt with it live on the air tonight. There's no reason to go dark with anybody. All right, man, tweets just keep coming in. Let's see here. You need to address Alejandro's theory on how and who built the pyramids, because I am truly impressed by his thoughts. Oh, I do see that, Eugene. I do see that. You are impressed. All right, yeah, no, I will do that tomorrow night, and I think that is something that will be talked about. Alejandro is about as straightforward as anybody out there, and we will do that. Now, I will say this. Probably 20, 30 plus email and then personal text too as well, saying get Van Doniken on the show. All right. I'll make arrangements tomorrow, and we'll bring Van Doniken in next week. I have a friend of mine that's going to have him on the show next month, so I don't think it'll be preempting anything, but you know, it's up to you guys. If you guys want Van Doniken, we will certainly do that. Okay? Oh, more tweets. Michael Anderson, I'm reading it. I won't read it on the air, but I see it. I'm with you. Dude, it appears that you received a tweet from Eric Von Daniken. I don't know. Is that really him? I don't know. I did see that come in. And the guy. I'll look at that a bit later. Retweet it. I saw the Van Doniken tweet. Anybody can be anybody. I was in the middle of stuff over here, so I didn't get a chance to get to it. But, yeah. Yeah, it might have been him. I don't know. All right, quick check of emails before I get out of here. Lou, I just read your tweet. Look at the tweet next to the egg. I tracked it back. Looks like the man himself. Oh, there you go. All right. Well, that'll make it easy for tomorrow. Eric, Mr. Van Doniken. You want to come on the show next week? We have Wednesday open. The Wednesday edition. You got to love it. All right. Oh, what a great show tonight. I'm exhausted. I'm tired. Got to do it all again tomorrow. Alejandro. Woo. Yeah, I'm checking that out, Keith. And you know what? You're absolutely right. Let's get the exit music going. All right. Oh, man, oh, man, oh, man. Yes. Okay, moving forward, I want to thank everybody for tonight. It was a great show. Let's get down to it. After the show tonight, oh, man, I got a quick call coming in. You're too late. We're running the music. Stay tuned. Coming up next, we have a new show. It's called the Arizona UFO Show. It is live with Rich Giordano. So go and check that out. Live show. Special thanks to Keith Rowland, Art Bell, Fade to Black's executive producers, Rita Komarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Palm and Mark D. Kovar. The announcers are Steve Harder and Mark D. Kovar. Music is this guy right here, Doug Aldrich. Oh, man, I meant to roll some music tonight. I was going to play Ron Young, Trask and the Fascination. I'll do that tomorrow night, Ron. Show intro is produced by Space Boy. Thank you, Space Boy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Dark Matter Radio Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. We'll see you tomorrow night. Good night, everybody. See ya.